Chapter 1123. Dustless was the one who secretly instigated this war. His goal was to get rid of the wandless empire that was hiding in the dark. Only by crushing them could Dustless be at ease. After all, this colossus was even stronger than the Grim Reaper. Dustless could still clearly remember that when he fought against Squad Zero, Urabakker's 4 personal guards had crushed them with overwhelming strength. That's right, it was an instant kill. The most shocking thing was that when he fought against Head Captain Yamamoto, although Urabakker had used a trick to get rid of him, it was enough to show Urabakker's foresight. Not only was he strong, but he was also unparalleled in wisdom. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. In Kangza City in the modern world, Candace and Bambietta had been waiting for Dustless for a long time. After all, Dustless was now equivalent to their boss. But what made the 2 girls stomp their feet was that when Dustless returned home, he brought back a woman with a voluptuous figure, Nero. Hey, I just have one more subordinate. Do you 2 need to be like this? On the sofa, Dustless looked at the 2 girls in front of him helplessly. Candace and Bambietta were looking at Dustless unkindly. Candace, in particular, seemed to be emitting lightning from her body. You're just satisfying your own selfish desires. Bambietta grumbled unhappily. She was very dissatisfied with Nero's appearance. Selfish desires? Hearing this, Dustless stared blankly. After thinking for a long time, he still couldn't understand what they were talking about. He couldn't help but ask curiously, "Forgive me for being blunt, but the selfish desires you're talking about are, gulp." Dustless suddenly understood what the 2 girls meant. He smiled bitterly and said, "Don't tell me you 2 think I brought Nero back to satisfy my own desires?" Dustless asked with a dark expression. Nero was not bad. She had the face and the figure, but he wasn't the kind of person who couldn't move when he saw a woman. Isn't that the case? Do you think you can hide your wild ambitions from the 2 of us? Stop joking around. Sometimes you're just a pervert. Bambietta sneered. Sometimes you're just a pervert. Bullshit. Dustless cursed in his heart. When he brought Nero back, he really didn't think in that direction. If I don't teach the 2 of you a lesson, you won't know how powerful I am. In the future, you might even go overboard and accuse me. Dustless thought to himself as he looked at the 2 overbearing women. Hee. Dustless seemed to have thought of something as he let out a chilling laugh from his throat, causing the souls of the 2 women to tremble. What do you want? Looking at Dustless's green eyes, the 2 girls glanced at each other and instinctively felt that something was amiss. They said in unison, "I advise you not to have any crooked thoughts, otherwise..." The 2 of you once said that as long as Wandless Empire collapses, I can do whatever I want to the 2 of you, right? Dustless dragged out his words as he asked maliciously. Hearing this, Candace and Bambietta were stunned. Back then, when they were forced into a corner and were about to be destroyed by Quincy, they did say that. Now that Wandless Empire is fighting with the Death God, it's only a matter of time before it collapses. Now, the 2 of you can redeem your promise. Back then, the 2 of you said that you would be my slaves. Dustless smiled as he looked at the 2 women's delicate bodies. About that Hearing this, the 2 women's faces flushed red. Candace argued with a red face, "Wandless Empire hasn't been destroyed yet, so it doesn't count." "That's right." Bambietta nodded. "You're twisting words and forcing logic." Dustless curled his lips in disdain as his gaze fell on Bambietta. Staring at her sparkling eyes and curvaceous body, he took advantage of her carelessness and pulled her into his arms. "You're an exception. You lost the bet back then, so you've been my maid for a long time." Dustless said with a smile as he blew hot air into Bambietta's ear, "Serving her young master in bed is also one of the duties of a maid, isn't it?" "You!" Bambietta's face flushed red as a strange emotion spread through her. Especially the scorching aura from Wu Chen's body, as well as the faint smell of sweat, it caused her mind to be in a mess. "Little Bambietta, just obey him." Seeing that Dustless was only circling around Bambietta, Candace relaxed and said with a smile, "You're his maid anyway." "You're right." Dustless gave her a look of praise, then looked at Candace, who was beaming with joy. Feeling rather displeased, he said in a strange tone, "I don't want someone who offers herself to me. She probably stinks of sweat. She smells as good as you." Taking advantage of Bambietta's distraction, Dustless pecked her perfect face at lightning speed. "So good. So smooth." Bambietta was dumbfounded. She subconsciously touched her face that was still stained with saliva and was instantly petrified. Candace was even more furious. She naturally understood that Wu Chen's eccentric voice was mocking her behind her back. He actually mocked her for stinking of sweat. It was difficult for Candace to remain calm. Just as the two women were about to explode in anger, a powerful spiritual pressure invaded them like a basin of cold water that extinguished their flames. Even Dustless frowned and restrained his playfulness. This spiritual pressure was extremely powerful, but it was not hostile. Instead, it deliberately lowered its spiritual pressure when it arrived to show its friendliness. Chapter 11:24. Dustless's playful heart gradually extinguished as he carefully sensed the changes in spiritual pressure. He could not help but be surprised because he felt that this abnormal spiritual pressure was very familiar. He had encountered it before. Who could it be? Dustless murmured, frowning as he thought to himself. It should be a powerhouse you once knew. The other party deliberately lowered his spiritual pressure as a gesture of goodwill. Otherwise, he would have already killed his way in. Candace showed her rare wise side as she analyzed carefully. Although the other party deliberately lowered his spiritual pressure and controlled it very skillfully, it's obvious that he has undergone years of training. He's obviously a captain-level Grim Reaper. No matter who he is, if he doesn't know what's good for him, I don't need to reason with him. Dustless stretched his waist lazily. No matter who the other party was, there was no need to care. If it was go against the current, he could just kill him. Soul Society was now in a mess anyway, and no one would care about what happened in the modern world. Candace and Bambietta looked at each other and fell silent. After all, Dustless was their boss, and now that their strength had been taken away, they would only be a hindrance, so they simply chose to turn a deaf ear. "I hope I didn't choose the wrong person." Outside the villa, a middle-aged man with a hat muttered to himself, "Oh, what a rare guest." Looking over, a young face wearing a kimono and holding a walking stick came into view. He was very young, but his eyes were exceptionally weathered. "Isn't this Manager Pu Yuan?" Suppressing the astonishment in his heart, Dustless asked indifferently, "What brings you here from afar? Seeing that you are safe and sound, you seem to have expected that I would not be sealed. Your wisdom is really enviable, Manager Pu Yuan." Dustless emphasized his words, and there was a hint of killing intent in his words. The visitor was Kisuke Urahara. "Of course." Kisuke Urahara replied calmly, ignoring Dustless's killing intent. "Don't forget that I have been operating in the modern world for 100 years. When you came to settle down in the modern world, I discovered you." "I see." Dustless didn't doubt his words and asked with interest, "Then why is Urahara's store manager here? Don't tell me you're here to arrest me." Hearing this, Urahara Kisuke smiled bitterly. If he really had such strength, he would have gone to the Broken Soul Society. "I'm here to seek cooperation." Urahara Kisuke took a deep breath and said solemnly, "Although I don't know how you broke out of prison, since you escaped and didn't do anything to Soul Society, it means that you don't want Soul Society to be destroyed." After that, Urahara Kisuke looked at Dustless thoughtfully, looking forward to his answer. "Idiot, it's only natural that I won't do anything. That's because someone else will do it for me." Dustless despised him in his heart, but he still pretended to be surprised and asked curiously, "Then why is Manager Urahara here?" Urahara Kisuke's expression suddenly stiffened, and he said solemnly, "To be honest, I'm here to seek cooperation with you. Now Soul Society is on the verge of collapse, and there's a possibility that it will be wiped out by annihilation at any time." Dustless couldn't help but be startled when he heard this. He lowered his head and thought silently, but he was shocked. The Grim Reaper he expected was not so fragile. However, the current situation seemed to be the opposite of what he expected. Dustless hoped that Grim Reaper and Annihilation would both suffer, instead of a one-sided annihilation. It seems that it's just as I thought. Although I don't know the reason, he doesn't want Grim Reaper to be destroyed. Urahara Kisuke suddenly smiled and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. He immediately remembered the terrible situation of Soul Society and said bluntly, "Annihilation suddenly invaded, and Soul Society is now in imminent danger." "Impossible. What about Head Captain Yamamoto and Squad Zero? What are they doing? Don't tell me they've all been wiped out." Dustless asked suspiciously, thinking of the strength of the Head Captain and Squad Zero. "They are very strong, but Annihilation is also very strong. They launched a sneak attack first, and Grim Reaper is almost always suppressed." Urahara Kisuke smiled bitterly and said, "This time, I came to cooperate with your excellency. Otherwise, Soul Society may step into a land of eternal damnation." Dustless's thoughts changed. Although he was happy that Squad Zero, Head Captain Yamamoto, and Sosuke Aizen were brutally beaten up, it was not in line with his original intention to be defeated by Annihilation. "You want to drag me down with you?" Dustless asked coldly after a moment. Urahara Kisuke paused for a moment and said, "You're right to think so, but this is the current situation of Soul Society. It's true that we have a grudge in the past, but I hope we can put it aside. If Grim Reaper is destroyed, it won't be good for anyone." Dustless didn't doubt Urahara Kisuke's words. Urahara Kisuke's sincerity was enough to come alone. "I really didn't expect. That group of Annihilation is so strong that they can suppress Godei 13. Murmuring with a strange light in his eyes, there was a hint of murderous intent in his words. "There are too many involved. Do you know Yawatch?" Urahara Kisuke asked. "The king of Annihilation?" "Of course I know." Dustless replied indifferently. Not only did he know, but he also heard a lot about it. He stared at Urahara Kisuke and saw his helpless face and a headache. Obviously, something was wrong. Chapter 11:25. Perhaps Urahara Kisuke's words were exaggerated, but it was undeniable that Soul Society was in a stalemate. After all, it was a fact that the Stern Ritter Legion had annihilated the Grim Reaper. Even Yawatch, Jugram, and the guards did not make a move. By the way, there is another important question. Speaking of this, Urahara Kisuke's face was extremely solemn. He pondered and said, "When I was still the captain of Soul Society, I heard a lot about Yoch." "About Yawatch?" Dustless's face flashed with a hint of doubt. He suddenly realized something and said, "It should be the information about Yawatch found in the Daling Library." Indeed. Urahara Kisuke did not deny it. The Daling Library was indeed a mysterious place. "But in it I got a terrible news." After a while, Urahara Kisuke's voice was extremely heavy and hoarse. Dustless could even see the sweat on his temples. "Get to the point." Waving his hand, Dustless's tone had a hint of irritation. He guessed that Urahara Kisuke was going to talk about Yawatch's background again. He had already guessed it. There was no need for Urahara Kisuke to say more. Urahara Kisuke was stunned. He remembered the serious situation and went straight to the point. He said cautiously, "In short, that group of Quincy is very troublesome. We can't let them live even if they die. No matter who wins or loses, this is a calamity." With a fierce look in his eyes, Urahara Kisuke stared at the puzzled Dustless and explained, "The common ancestor of Quincy is Yawatch. They call him the Sealed King. All Quincy have Yawatch's blood in their bodies. Their abilities also belong to Yawatch, including the Stern Ritter Legion that is attacking Soul Society now. Their abilities are all given by Yawatch. I also know this. Yawatch has an ability called Saint. After a Quincy dies, their souls all belong to Yawatch. He can use Saint to resurrect all those who died." Before Dustless could finish the last few words, his voice suddenly stopped. Looking at his face, it was like a dark cloud. He suddenly realized that once all the Quincy are annihilated, their souls will all return to Yawatch, which may also lead to Yawatch's early resurrection. "It seems that you have realized the problem, so I don't need to explain more." Seeing this, Urahara Kisuke exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and sighed heavily. "So, No matter what, the one who loses in the end is Shinigami. Since you don't want Shinigami to be destroyed, we can work together. Are you not afraid that I will plot against you? After all, we have a grudge. Looking at this moment, Dustless was he Kasuk's Eren, he Kasuk him, he even the previous grudges. Was Kasuk. If I can, of course, I won't cooperate with you, but right now, I have no choice. The group of people in the Mask Legion has gone berserk, and I have no allies to choose from. Although there is still Ishin for me to choose, he has lost the power of Reaper, and he is having fun with his wife and children. Kasuk Urahara said in annoyance. Like a defeated rooster, he was dispirited and cursed in his heart. You are being honest for once. Dustless smiled. He knew that this was the truth, because now the whole world was involved in the war. Even Sosuke Aizen was fighting against Jugram because of Dustless's instigation. No matter who was right or wrong between Kasuk Urahara and Dustless, it didn't matter, because there was only one way to go, and that was to cooperate with Dustless. In the whole world, only Dustless was free at the moment. Cooperation is possible. But, how do you plan to cooperate? First of all, what's in it for me? Dustless suddenly asked. Cooperation is naturally a win-win situation. If there are no benefits, Dustless won't do it. Kasuk Urahara hesitated when he heard this. He also understood the truth that you can't catch the wolf without sacrificing the child. However, what gave him a headache was that there were no benefits for Dustless. Soul Society is going to be finished, and this is the biggest disadvantage for you. Kasuk Urahara's eyes lit up, and he began to quibble. If that's the case, I'm sorry, I can't cooperate with you. Dustless shook his head and directly rejected Kasuk Urahara's conditions. What he meant was that he wanted Dustless to be a coolie, but he didn't get anything in return. Even if Quincy can really annihilate Shinigami, it will definitely be a lose-lose situation in the end. Speaking of this, Dustless's tone was obviously stagnant, and he smiled. I can just sit back and reap the benefits. When Quincy is exhausted, I will lead my subordinates to destroy all of them. Even if Yawach really resurrects in advance, it can't be helped. I don't think I'm not his opponent. Kasuk Urahara's face was obviously ugly. He never doubted Dustless's strength. Even if his good friend Dustless fought one-on-one, the scale of victory may eventually tilt towards Dustless. After all, Dustless's strength was there, and Kasuk Urahara chose to cooperate with him because he knew how strong he was. In short, without benefits, everything was in vain. Chapter 1126. Urahara Kasuk bowed his head and was silent for a while. His head was dizzy and very uncomfortable. After thinking hard for a long time, he still didn't think that he could give Dustless anything. Hee. Manager Urahara seems to be very confused. Dustless chuckled, then his face changed and said with a cunning look, How about I say a condition? Hearing this, Urahara Kasuk restrained his expression, and a cautious look flashed across his face. Staring at Dustless's gloomy face, Urahara Kasuk instinctively felt that something was wrong. He seemed to be making a deal with the devil. Being stared at by Dustless's shining eyes, Urahara Kasuk felt uncomfortable and had a feeling that a great disaster was coming. It doesn't matter if you don't agree, but one thing is certain, Soul Society will not last long. Dustless said calmly and deliberately added, Head Captain Yamamoto is old, and Soul Society has been severely damaged by me before. The probability of them blocking Quincy's attack is 0, and they are close to extinction. Urahara Kasuk's face turned black and extremely ugly. He gritted his teeth and said, What's the condition? Let's hear it. I knew you would agree, so why are you hiding it? Dustless was very disdainful, and immediately thought for a moment and said, One day in the future, after Soul King falls, you must stand up and support me to become the new Soul King. Urahara Kasuk was petrified, his eyes widened, and stared at Dustless in a daze. Are you serious? Soul King will never fall. Hearing this, Urahara Kasuk's first thought was that he had misheard. The fall of Soul King is inevitable. Even if Yawach lets Soul King go, Dustless will not let Soul King go. He will devour Soul King in some way, and his strength will be increased explosively. Don't think it's incredible, only I can replace Soul King in the world. Wu Chen raised his eyebrows in an unusually serious manner. Soon after, he changed the topic and said, "Why do you think Squad Zero didn't kill me to prevent future troubles? In fact, Yawatch is a nightmare for them. After the Spirit King is killed, they can use me as a replacement." Urahara Kisuk nodded in agreement. The existence of Psionic King was a disgrace to Yawatch. Therefore, he wanted to kill Psionic King by any means possible. It was understandable that Team Zero wanted to find a spare tire. However, the existence of the Spirit King is extremely special. Can you really replace him? He is the foundation to maintain the operation of the world. Not everyone can do it. Urahara Kisuk was puzzled and full of doubts. You don't have to worry about this. Do you agree to my conditions or refuse? Dustless shook his head, apparently not interested in answering Urahara Kisuk's question. If you can really do it, I will definitely support you in the future. After all, this is not good for Soul Society. Urahara Kisuk finally chose to compromise. At the same time, he was relieved. If Dustless could really become the Spirit King, then it would be the best. It also meant that this mortal enemy would become an ally from now on. Even if this ally was very strange, and his temper was unpredictable, at least from now on, he could barely be regarded as a comrade in the trenches. You group of idiots are simply stubborn. Of course, I can't replace the Spirit King, but I can change to another way. A group of big idiots. Seeing Urahara Kisuk smiling, Dustless slandered in his heart. Frankly speaking, he really couldn't replace the Spirit King. After all, the Spirit King was created by human factors, and its purpose was to stabilize the entry and exit of souls. Although Dustless had many abilities, he was not omnipotent. He couldn't stabilize the entry and exit of souls in Hueco Mundo, the modern world, and Soul Society. However, if one day the Spirit King and Dustless merged into one, then it would be a different story. Of course, it didn't mean that Dustless himself and the Spirit King merged into one. Just thinking about the Spirit King's strange appearance, Dustless couldn't help but shudder. Absorb the Spirit King into the Hogyoku, let them merge into one, and then I merge with the Hogyoku, hee. Then I will be a brand new Spirit King. You group of idiots are really stupid. Looking at Urahara Kisuk with pity, Dustless's heart was full of sympathy. After absorbing the Spirit King, the Hogyoku naturally became a brand new Radiant, and could provide Dustless with more Ryatsu. Although the Hogyoku claimed to be able to evolve infinitely, but since its consciousness was destroyed by him, its ability was greatly reduced. After absorbing the Spirit King, it could naturally make up for the previous fragmentation, and it was possible to go to the next level. It could make up for the loss after erasing the Hogyoku, expand the Hogyoku's limit, and also become the God of Death, the Spirit King, becoming the unique supreme leader, commanding the entire Death God. Dustless obviously didn't suffer a loss in this deal. It was profitable and it was very big. But then again, how do you want me to help Death God? Even if my identity is exposed, I don't want to become a wanted criminal in Soul Society again. Staring at Urahara Kisuk's proud smile, Dustless's tone left no room for negotiation. Of course, this is a must. Perhaps because he was in a good mood, Urahara Kisuk suddenly became incomparably flamboyant. He opened his white and blue folding fan, covering half of his face, and smiled. What you want to do is actually very simple. Simple? Hearing this, Dustless directly turned a deaf ear. Urahara Kisuk was willing to lower himself to cooperate with him. It was definitely not a simple task. At least, he couldn't do it himself, otherwise, he wouldn't have made an unnecessary move to cooperate with Dustless. Chapter 1127. Quietly looking at the complacent Urahara Kisuk, Wu Chen couldn't help but feel funny, especially looking at the bandages all over Urahara Kisuk's body. His mind was even more strange. If Urahara Kisuk knew that the person who plotted against him was Wu Chen, who knew what he would think? But now, it didn't matter anymore. Your Excellency's task is very simple. Defeat the current leader of Quincy, Jugram. Hearing this, Dustless slightly raised his eyebrows, glanced at Urahara Kasuk suspiciously, and confirmed again. I said before, I won't expose my identity. Dustless rejected Urahara Kasuk without hesitation, feeling that this guy was pushing him into a fire pit. Of course, I know this. There's no need to worry, I've prepared everything. Urahara Kasuk smiled mysteriously, looking very cunning and despicable. I've set up a barrier in Soul Society in advance. As long as we lure Jugram over and defeat this leader of Quincy, other people's attacks will collapse on their own. It's not luck that this guy was able to plot against Sosuke Aizen in the future. Such foresight, I have to guard against him. After taking a deep look at Urahara Kasuk, Dustless withdrew his gaze and nodded. No problem, I also want to see how different this Jugram is. Dustless's eyes were filled with expectation. He still remembered that Jugram had a special identity, the other half of Yawatch. The 75th district of Drifting Soul Street, just lure Jugram there. Urahara Kasuk's eyes lit up, and at the same time, he disappeared with the wind. Hey, are you really going to fight against that guy Jugram? He's very strong. He has the ability to kill a member of Sterncross Knights in one hit. Candace and Bambietta came out of the door and said with a worried tone, that wretched uncle in the hat looks very cunning, don't be fooled. I've made up my mind. Since we'll meet sooner or later, I might as well take the opportunity to test him now. Dustless waved his hand and said with relief. The flames of war in Soul Society soared to the sky, forming a sea of flames. Sosuke Aizen and Jugram were fiercely fighting, but Aizen was obviously at a disadvantage, and even showed signs of defeat. It's normal for him to be at a disadvantage now, after all, he hasn't swallowed Hogyoku yet, and Sosuke Aizen's biggest trump card is useless against Jugram. Dustless murmured. In the distant battlefield, Aizen Sosuke had been forced to retreat. He hadn't merged with Hogyoku yet, and for some reason his Kyoka Suigetsu ability was ineffective against Jugram. I'll let you go and bring that guy over. This guy's strength is strength's release. S's. This he, son the other side, Aizen Sosuke felt the tyrannical power coming from the Zanpakuto, and his face became silent. I'll let you know the consequences of betraying Wandless Empire. Jugram's killing intent surged, and his spiritual pressure went berserk. Just as he was about to deal a fatal blow to Aizen Sosuke, several sharp lights locked onto him. Several transparent arrows shot out from the side, wanting to tear Jugram into pieces. Naive. With a sweep of his sword, a huge ray of white light shot out. The incoming arrows were instantly reduced to ashes, but Jugram's slash was unstoppable. It flew toward the attacker like a rainbow piercing through the sun. Agility? A ripple appeared in Jugram's eyes, and he was very surprised when he saw who it was. He immediately abandoned Aizen Sosuke and chased after Barrow. Although I don't know what's going on, this is good. I don't want to expose my strength either. It's best if you guys can kill more death gods. That would be for the best. Aizen glanced at Jugram and turned to leave. Stop right there, Agility. Jugram roared. It was because of him that Quincy, who had been hiding for thousands of years, had to resurface. He still needed to solve all the mysteries. Tis. On the 75th Street, Dustless, who was resting, opened his eyes and stared at the figure coming from the horizon. A teasing smile appeared on his face. Agility. Barrow was controlled by his Rinnegan. After a while, Agility. Barrow landed on the ground and strangely disappeared. This is... Jugram narrowed his eyes. His thick black eyebrows were involuntarily raised. His gaze immediately spread out and a smiling Wuchen was reflected in his eyes. "'Tis you?" Jugram was stunned and frowned. "'Tis you who should be suppressed. Why are you here?" Dustless was unmoved when he heard that. He smiled lazily and said, "I can only tell you one thing. The person who is going to be suppressed today is called Jugram Hasward." "'Tis you?" Jugram sneered. "'Tis you who thinks that Team Zero can't do anything to you, and I can't do anything to you?" Oh. Bang! Before Jugram could finish his sentence, a flash of light came and he was sent flying by Dustless' sneak attack. I hate people like you who have no strength but are arrogant. Chapter 11:28. This kick was merciless. It sent Jugram flying hundreds of meters away. A large footprint could be seen on his handsome face. You're asking for it? Dustless sneered in his heart. It was fine if Yawach wanted to die. After all, his strength was there for all to see. However, this Jugram was just a personal bodyguard. To put it bluntly, he was just a lackey. Not bad. You're quite strong. Jugram, who had stood up, was indifferent. It was as if Dustless had kicked someone else. He was very quiet and cold. He did not even touch the wound and ignored it. This guy is quite open-minded, Dustless said in astonishment as he looked at Jugram. But that's all there is to it. With a cold laugh, Jugram formed a great sage bow in an instant. It was a weapon specially used by Quincy. Great sage bow. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Following Jugram's order, a dense rain of arrows instantly shot out. The sharpness of the arrows made one unable to look at them directly. The sharp whistling sound made one's scalp go numb. The attacks were ruthless. They were aimed at Dustless's eyes, heart, and head. Insignificant skill. Glancing faintly at the arrows that were completely compressed by spiritual particles, Wu Chen directly ignored them. His body directly glowed with a faint light. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The cold light pierced through Dustless's body. However, he was completely unscathed. The damaged parts only glowed with a golden light. Then they were repaired. He was completely fine. Looks like Bizabi was right. You do have the ability to ignore physical attacks. A strange emotion appeared on Jugram's clean face. He lowered his tactics and spoke with a rare gentleness in his voice. The Wanless Empire needs experts like you. If you're willing to join us, we can let bygones be bygones. Your friends will also receive the most sincere care. Pfft. Dustless could not help but laugh. He teased, if you chop off Yawach's head and give it to me as a urinal, I'll consider it. You're courting death. Hearing this, thick killing intent flashed across Jugram's face, and his spiritual pressure soared by countless times. You think you're invincible? That was unrealistic. According to the information that Busby got from you, the ability of the holy word can reach your body after you enter the holy body. As soon as he finished speaking, 2 pairs of pure white wings appeared behind Jugram's back. They shone brightly and looked extremely holy. However, in Dustless's eyes, it was an eyesore. Do you think you're an angel just because you have 2 chicken feathers? Dustless mocked. His pupils widened, and the black flames began to burn endlessly. Tenzo. Netherworld flames burned on both sides of Jugram's wings, rapidly devouring the surface area of his pure white wings. He was slightly taken aback when he saw this, but he immediately swung his blade without hesitation. Poochie! The pure white wings were ruthlessly chopped off by Jugram, and there wasn't the slightest bit of hesitation on his face. This fellow seems very difficult to deal with. Seeing this, Dustless frowned slightly. Photons condensed in his hand and compressed into a high-density greatsword. Looking at the greatsword in Dustless's hand, Jugram asked, "Is this your Bankai? I don't have a Zanpakuto." Hearing this, Dustless replied in disappointment. This was the only regret in his life. Then he calmly changed the topic and said, "But I do have a Zanpakuto, so I don't need it to deal with a small pawn like you." Dustless's sarcasm would have angered even a person with a good temper. Jugram, who had an unkind expression, pounced over with a twisted face. Fylian kick. Like a space jump, Jugram instantly appeared behind Dustless. Then, a sharp aura swept up and mercilessly cut toward Dustless's head. Shinra-tensei. The repulsive force erupted rapidly. Caught off guard, Jugram was instantly sent flying by this force. Seeing this, Dustless's eyes shot out a cold light. He did not stop and chased after him. The chakra in his body boiled, and his gaze locked onto Jugram's torn clothes. Dustless's eyes widened and he shouted, "Heavenly hand power!" Dustless, who was 20 to 30 meters away, instantly appeared behind Jugram. A huge flash of light filled with destructive aura mercilessly greeted his head. Lightspeed kick. Resplendent flashes of light rumbled and annihilated Jugram's entire body. The powerful force kicked him into the air. Go to hell, eyesore of a small fry. Dustless, whose eyes were filled with murderous intent, was as terrifying as a prehistoric beast. His spiritual pressure burst out like a torrential rain, faintly revealing a turbid coat of arms, an unruly and arrogant talent. Surge, negation, rebound, extend to the ground, know your own powerlessness. Staring at the charred figure in the sky, Dustless finished his chant and spoke in a cold voice. Breaking the Tao's 90, Black Coffin. Under Dustless's all-out chant, the power of the Black Coffin instantly increased. It was eerie and terrifying. An incomparably huge black coffin stood on the ground, emitting an ancient and decaying aura. Inside it, countless sharp invisible blades suddenly appeared and attacked Jugram's body at the same time. Fortunately, Urahara Kisuk had set up a barrier in advance, so no one saw this exaggerated scene. The sharp edges of the black coffin tore Jugram into pieces at the same time. Chapter 1129. Perhaps it was a misconception, but Dustless actually saw Jugram break out of his cocoon and be reborn. He's actually fine? After a while, Dustless said in shock after confirming that he was not mistaken. Looking closely, Jugram's body was clean and unharmed. He was completely unharmed. He had not been attacked at all. He was completely at ease. It was as if none of the attacks had hit him. What's going on? Stroking his chin, Dustless looked left and right. He was sure that his previous series of attacks had heavily injured Jugram. Even if he had been blessed by the heavens and survived, he should have at least been injured. But now, he was completely unharmed. What's that? Looking up at the sky, Dustless suddenly realized that the sky had darkened. A strangely shaped scale was floating in the sky, leaning toward Dustless. This seems to be Jugram's ability. In the original work, he used this ability to break Tsangdu's ability and instantly kill him, Dustless pondered. Looking at the unscathed Jugram, a look of understanding flashed in his eyes. Jugram's codename in the Wanless Empire was B, and his ability was Balance. This was the scale floating in the sky. Once the scale fell toward Dustless, his abilities and strength would be unlimitedly weakened. I see. Suddenly understanding, Dustless praised, the black coffin that attacked you, as well as the body art from before, were all weakened by you. No wonder you were unaffected. You're not simple. Hearing this, Jugram did not feel any joy. Instead, his brows furrowed tightly. His wariness toward Dustless had reached an unprecedented level. He rarely made a move, but Dustless had seen through his ability. You're right. Since his ability had been seen through, Jugram did not hide it and directly admitted it. He said calmly, "This is my holy word ability, Balance. When the scale floating in the sky falls toward you, all of your abilities will be weakened. Your skills will not harm me at all, just like that ghost path just now. It has no effect on me at all." He is indeed very strong. Dustless didn't comment when he heard this, and then he took the initiative to launch an awe-inspiring attack. Tao Breaker 88, Flying Dragon strikes the thief. In the blink of an eye, a thick beam of light shot out, engulfing and annihilating Jugram. Who would have thought that Jugram, who was bathed in the light, would be completely unscathed? He didn't react at all, and his face remained as calm as an ancient well. What was even more shocking was that he was slowly walking over against the light. In his hand was a cold glinting sword, and he strolled over in a relaxed manner. Damn Yoch. Upon seeing this, Dustless couldn't help but curse his friend Habak. That was because all of the Starcross Knight's abilities came from him, and this inconceivable balance ability was far too overpowered. Dustless's attacks were weakened, and the damage he dealt to Jugram was 0. Swish. Swish. Jugram's speed was 10 times faster than before, and he couldn't even catch a glimpse of his shadow. By the time he realized this, Jugram had already sliced through his body. At the crucial moment, Dustless decisively used God's might to materialize himself. "You didn't hit me?" Jugram was stunned, and his tone was filled with doubt. He subconsciously looked at Dustless, but what he got in return was a cold beam of light. Poochie! The sword light cut through Jugram's body, and the blood on the blade of the heavenly sword of clouds evaporated rapidly. Jugram looked at the wound on his waist and felt the piercing pain all over his body. He couldn't believe it and said, "Impossible, you should have been weakened by my ability." "Weakened? You have indeed weakened me." Dustless shook his head. His black coffin didn't have any effect on Jugram, and this explained everything. "However, even if you weaken me without limit, the difference between the two of us is still like heaven and earth. It's just like an ocean. Even if you suck in 99% of its water, it's not something a stream can compare to. Do you understand what I mean?" Jugram's face turned green. How could he not understand what Dustless meant? He sneered and said, "In other words, you can deal with me with the remaining 1% of your strength?" As expected of Yawacha's loyal lackey, so smart, Dustless gave him a thumbs up, and his expression was extremely cold. He unleashed all of his strength and charged at Jugram with his sword. His expression was calm and fearless. Jugram's balancing ability was indeed a heaven-defying and invincible existence. When one side of the sky was lowered, the enemy would be weakened in all aspects. On the other hand, Jugram's strength would increase exponentially. However, for a skill like God's Might, it was useless no matter how much it was weakened. This skill wasn't an attack in the first place. Bang bang bang. The two of them fought back and forth fiercely. Saber light and sword shadows flashed and sparks danced in the air. Along with a loud boom, a white figure was sent flying. Dustless had won for now. Huff, huff, huff. This bastard's ability actually reduced spiritual pressure, stamina, effort, and even the chakra in my body to a negligible level. Dustless panted heavily. Just a few rounds of fighting and he was already half dead from exhaustion. Chapter 1130. Dustless was extremely depressed. In an instant, he felt that he had turned into an old man who was hundreds of years old. Walking was extremely tiring, and his whole body was being eroded by some mysterious power. He was like an old man with a candle in the wind, and his strength was being stripped away. In an instant, he became weak and powerless. It was as if a gentle breeze could blow him away. This power is really troublesome. Dustless's old face was flushed red, and he almost fainted from exhaustion. Jugram's face didn't change from the beginning to the end. Looking at Dustless, his eyes were filled with pure pity, and he said coldly, "It's already commendable that you can hold on until now. Now let me purify you. You should be proud to die in my hands, and you should be able to rest in peace in the underworld for scheming against our wandless empire." After saying that, Jugram stepped forward gracefully. "You want to purify me? You overestimate yourself." Dustless coldly snorted, full of contempt and provocation. The eye power of Samsara's Sharingan went berserk. Even if 99% of the eye power was suppressed, the eye power that erupted was still extremely powerful. After all, Dustless was the main body of the Jubi, and his data in all aspects were perfect. Tomb of Samsara, border prison. Several shadows suddenly appeared, and under the control of Dustless's mind, they immediately rushed towards Jugram. Bang bang bang. Dustless's shadows caught Jugram and beat him up without mercy. The most heaven-defying thing was that these shadows all used armament hockey. That fist, which was harder than a meteor, smashed into Jugram's body, causing him to howl in pain and let out a miserable cry. Boom boom boom. As the foot fell, Jugram's whole body was blasted away by the shadow formed by Tomb of Samsara, border prison. His whole body was covered in blood, and his handsome face was badly mutilated. It seems that he used blood-calming equipment. Otherwise, he should have been beaten to a pulp. Dustless muttered in his heart. At the same time, he jokingly said, "Yo, how did you get beaten up like this? Didn't you say that you want to purify me? Come here." Dustless was full of disdain and contempt, giving people the feeling that he was a villain who had succeeded. He didn't have the slightest good impression of this Jugram. If it wasn't for the chakra and the various powers in his body being weakened, he would have definitely beaten this guy into a pulp. Looking at his eyes that seemed to see through everything, Dustless's stomach, and he couldn't help but want to vomit. As I said before, even though the river dried up, it's not something that a small stream like you can compare, Dustless said indifferently. Perhaps Jugram couldn't see it, but there were several shadows in front of him. It was impossible for Jugram to get close to Dustless. What kind of despicable trick you? Jugrams of samsaras. After being beaten up for no reason, he was abnormally angry, and the most annoying thing was that he couldn't even find a trace of the enemy. They're right in front of you, but you can't see them. Dustless shook his head in pity, full of sarcasm. The shadows he formed using Samsara's tomb, border prison, were all standing in front of Jugram, but he couldn't see them. Since you've shown me such a powerful ability, I'll also open your eyes. Dustless's face turned red, and he laughed sinisterly. At the same time, the shadows controlled by his mind began to attack Jugram again. Without exception, their fists were all covered with armament hockey. Poochie. Caught off guard, Jugram was sent flying by the incoming fist. His handsome chin was knocked askew, his teeth fell to the ground, and blood dyed his mouth red. Blood-calming armor. A large amount of Ryatsu was injected into the meridians under the skin, and the surface was immediately covered with dense lines. Jugram, who was helpless, could only passively take the beating. He was blinded, and he couldn't see who attacked him at all. In just a few seconds, Jugram was beaten black and blue. His whole body was dripping with blood, and he looked very miserable. His whole person was like a prisoner on death row, and he was extremely embarrassed. I won't let you die so easily. What you've given me, I'll return to you hundreds of times. Dustless said coldly. He gave off the feeling of a demon, and there was no human aura at all. Boom boom boom. An extremely powerful energy beam erupted, raging like a hurricane. The enchantment set up by Urahara Kisuk creaked and gradually showed signs of collapsing. It seems that I can't play anymore. Dustless muttered to himself. The hostility in his eyes was buried deep. He looked at Jugram as if he was looking at a corpse, without any emotion. Although I don't know what's going on, one thing is certain. The person behind this technique must be. Bang bang bang. Before Jugram's words fell, another wave of punches and kicks annihilated him, ruthlessly destroying him. He was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. Shoo shoo shoo. At this moment, a violent roar sounded, and after images that were difficult to catch with the naked eye came head-on. They almost instantly arrived in front of Dustless, and the sharp Ryatsu sword slashed down. However, at this moment, a sudden change occurred. The sudden change made Jugram dumbfounded as he stared blankly at the dazzling sky in front of him. He suddenly felt that he was very small, like an hourglass, and was easily subdued in an instant. Chapter 1131. The golden light in the void connected together, and the scale and momentum were incomparably vast. It was so dazzling that Jugram could not open his eyes. At this moment, two daggers slowly wrapped around Jugram. His arms and legs were all bound by golden chains, and he was easily subdued like a dumpling. What is this? Jugram muttered. He swayed his body and released his spiritual pressure at the same time, trying to use his powerful strength to shatter the chains. However, the effect caused Jugram's eyes to widen. His spiritual pressure had no effect on these golden chains at all. This is called the Heaven Lock. Dustless's eyes were exceptionally dim and powerless. His entire body was filled with powerlessness. After seeing Jugram being subdued, he directly sat on the ground. Heaven Lock. Hearing this, Jugram repeated the name. He knew all kinds of death gods Bankai and the ghost Tao, but he realized that he had never seen this Heaven Lock before. It seemed to have jumped out of the category of Death God. It was not just Death God, but also Void and Quincy. Although I am surprised that you have such a trump card, no matter what moves you use, they are useless against me. Jugram's confidence rose from the ashes, and he proudly said, "In front of God, nothing is worth mentioning." Hearing these arrogant words, Dustless's face was filled with smiles. He was abnormally bright as he smiled and said, "What a coincidence! My heaven lock is effective against gods. It is a type of god of law weapon." What was a god of law? It could be understood that it was specially used to restrict gods. Nonsense. Hearing this, Jugram laughed coldly and unleashed even more powerful spiritual pressure. At the same time, his heaven-defying ability of balance was strengthened without limit, weakening the effects of the heaven lock. I will show you that the so-called god of law weapon is actually a piece of scrap metal. Under Jugram's effect, the golden heaven lock instantly turned into a trash-like existence. It lost its previous golden luster and became dim. Some parts even rusted. Can such a thing still be called god of law? Jugram coldly asked. His spiritual pressure spread out in all directions. Just as he was about to completely shatter the heaven lock, a change suddenly occurred. Clang, clang, clang. Heavy spiritual pressure washed over the rusty heaven lock, but it didn't seem to have any effect. The only thing it did was make a series of crisp sounds. Apart from that, there was nothing special about it. How is this possible? Jugram's pupils shrank when he saw this. His pupils dilated several times as he looked at the firm heavenly lock. His heart turned cold and he was so shocked that he was speechless. She subconsciously raised her eyes and saw Dustless looking calm and composed, as if everything was within his expectations. The uniqueness of the heaven lock is not its material, but its uniqueness. Dustless's voice sounded very old as he explained in a neither slow nor slow manner. God of justice is a type of rule. It has nothing to do with the material used to create the heaven lock. What do you mean? Hasworth, who was at a loss, frowned slightly. He felt that Dustless was implying something. The meaning is very simple. Dustless smiled and explained, "It's because you're a god that the power of the heavenly lock can be maximized." Nonsense. Snorting coldly, Jugram said with contempt, "I'll tear this piece of scrap metal apart for you to see. This enchantment won't last long. Don't waste my time." Dustless glanced at Jugram, who had a ferocious expression, and lowered his right arm. The light in the void instantly shone to the extreme. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Countless divine weapons came crashing down. The sharp cold light was enough to cut through mountains and separate the sky. The void was replaced by a sea of weapons. Gulp. Bean-sized beads of sweat dripped down from Jugram's forehead. Seeing this, Jugram struggled even harder, but it was useless. He could only watch as the weapons came at him. He was destined to be pierced full of holes. Poochie, poochie, poochie. The sound of his body being cut apart didn't stop. Jugram was in an abnormally miserable state. His body was pierced by all kinds of weapons. It was too horrible to look at. His limbs, internal organs, and even his head and throat were all severely injured. "You bastard!" Jugram used all his strength to speak in a hoarse voice. His throat was already damaged, and it was very difficult for him to speak. He said with hatred, "Don't think that you've won. I will make a comeback." "I know that." Dustless smiled calmly. His body had completely recovered, which meant that Jugram was completely done for. However, this was only a temporary victory. After they died, their souls would all belong to Yaoch. They could still use their saint abilities to revive again. Unless they killed Yaoch himself. "So what if I make a comeback? I can kill you once. Do you think there won't be a next time?" "Idiot, I can only tell you that it will be even easier to kill you next time." Dustless didn't care. He wouldn't fall for the same ability twice. Jugram laughed sinisterly and shouted, "Don't be so poochie." Before he could finish his sentence, Jugram's body was cut into two. The cold light of the heaven cluster cloud sword pierced through his body and cut him in half mercilessly. "You don't even realize your own identity. A lackey will always be a lackey." His indifferent gaze swept across the ground. Jugram's body instantly burned with black flames. The flames only stopped when he completely disappeared. Chapter 1132. Dustless looked expressionlessly at Jugram, who was being burned by the raging fire. His heart was abnormally calm. At this moment, the barrier set up by Urahara Kisuk finally couldn't bear the burden and collapsed. The scorched earth on the ground was exposed to the air. "You asked for it." After a while, Dustless murmured. Just as he was about to leave, an uninvited guest suddenly appeared. "Are you here to die?" Dustless asked indifferently. The newcomer seemed to have noticed that Jugram's spiritual pressure had disappeared. He stared at Dustless ferociously, and the spiritual particles around him were filled with flames. It was obvious that this person was about to go berserk. He locked onto Dustless, and the violent spiritual pressure fluctuations directly shook the ground. Dustless looked up and glanced at this person. He said indifferently, "Even Yawach won't revive someone like you after you're killed. You're different from those guards and Jugram. You're just a small chess piece." Dustless said coldly. The newcomer was Busby, who had been killed by him before. Who would have thought that after being revived, he would come to die again? "Hugo, Jugram's spiritual pressure has disappeared. Did you do it?" Busby tried his best to retract the flames that were about to erupt from his body, and waited for Dustless's answer with a twisted face. Crack, crack, crack. A crisp sound of bones rang out and drilled into Dustless's ears. It came from Busby's body. Dustless saw that he was so angry that his bones were creaking. As you can see, Dustless still maintained his indifference. His indifferent tone was as if he was talking about a trivial matter. "Impossible. You can't kill Hugo at your level. You must have used some despicable and insidious trick." As if he had been greatly insulted, Busby roared furiously. "You're no different from a wild beast." Dustless shook his head and glanced at Busby. He gave him a look of pity and turned to leave. He had no desire to kill someone who was filled with anger and had already killed once. "Stop right there." With a low roar, Busby turned into a flaming hurricane and rushed out, instantly sealing off Dustless's path of retreat. "Get out of my way before I have the thought of killing you." Dustless's eyes flashed with killing intent. He closed his eyes and muttered to himself, as if lamenting why there were so many idiots who overestimated themselves in this world. His expression was as ferocious as a wild beast's. Busby didn't appreciate it. He flicked his fingers, gathering spiritual particles, and a sharp light shot out. Holy Annihilation Arrow. Sensing the incoming killing intent, Dustless suddenly opened his eyes. Many arrows compressed by Lingzi pierced toward him. Dustless's face flashed with a touch of cold hostility. Binding Tao 81, space shattering. The transparent wall cut off the world. Even though it was as thin as a cicada's wing and seemed to be unable to withstand a single blow, Dustless was as immovable as a mountain. His quiet appearance was extremely calm. Bang, bang, bang. After a few consecutive collisions, the transparent barrier remained unmoved and defended against Busby's attacks. Boom, boom, boom. Seeing this, Busby didn't have the slightest awareness of being weak. Instead, the Ryatsu all over his body rolled, and he planned to fight to the death. "You're hopeless." Dustless was too lazy to talk nonsense. His pupils slightly widened, and ripples surged out from his Rinnegan. The 9 mysterious Magatama shook, and he disappeared without a trace. Where did he go? Busby was taken aback and immediately looked for Dustless's trace in exasperation. "Poochie!" A sharp light came from behind and instantly pierced through Busby's body. When did this happen? Looking at the scorching light sword in his chest in disbelief, Busby's face was as pale as paper. Sensing that his vitality was rapidly draining, he used all his strength to turn his head. The one holding the sword was Dustless with a deathly expression. "It's impossible for you to spy on heavenly hand power at your level." Dustless spat out a sentence from the corner of his mouth. His entire body was filled with murderous intent. He immediately lifted his thumb and aimed at Busby's head. Tao Breaker 88, Flying Dragon strikes the thief. A thick flash erupted from the tip of his finger, and Busby, who was close to him, instantly collapsed. Not even a corpse was left behind. He was directly crushed into dust by the flash. "Ah, you're really strong. No wonder you can face the captain and Team Zero alone." At this moment, a shocked voice suddenly sounded. A young man wearing a kimono, a hat, and a crutch descended from the sky. Of course, his voice was filled with fear. Glancing at him, Dustless retracted his gaze. This person was Urahara Kisuke. You're the one who lured that mohawk here, right, Manager Urahara? Closing his eyes, Dustless carefully sensed the changes within a radius of tens of miles. He opened his eyes again, revealing a strange look. Urahara Kisuke, you seem to have misunderstood something. I'm cooperating with you, not being used by you. Revealing a thick killing intent, the ground was covered with a layer of frost. Dustless warned, once I feel that I'm not getting any benefits from cooperating with you, I'll immediately stop and even fight with you. Using you as a tool? How is that possible? Everything is a misunderstanding. Urahara Kisuke made his signature move, covering half of his face with a fan, and smiled. That guy seems to be called Busby. He's a close friend of Jugram, who was killed by you. It's normal for him to feel his spiritual pressure disappear and come to help, Captain Dustless. I hope so. Dustless directly refused and then added, don't call me Captain. That's all in the past. Now I only have one purpose, to replace the Soul King. That means we still have room for cooperation. Happy cooperation in the future. Urahara Kisuke laughed, but his laughter was very embarrassed. It sounded very forced, full of vigilance and fear. He clearly saw the battle just now. If it weren't for his heaven-defying ability, Urahara Kisuke was sure that Jugram would have been instantly killed. Chapter 1133. Urahara Kisuke had a new understanding of Dustless's strength. He had already reached the realm of perfection. Now that he was so terrifying without the Hogyoku, once he got the Hogyoku, he would become a godlike enemy. Just imagining it, his blood and breathing would not be smooth. The basis of our cooperation will never change, you can rest assured. Urahara Kisuke patted his thin and weak chest and promised. His words were full of sincerity and sincerity. I hope so. After glancing at Urahara Kisuke, Dustless turned and left. What happened to Soul Society had nothing to do with him. Now that the situation was settled, Jugram, the culprit, had fallen, it was equivalent to the entire Quincy losing its brain, and it was close to extinction. Dustless and Urahara Kisuke brushed past each other, leaving him with a back view. After taking a deep look at Dustless, Urahara Kisuke no longer spoke. Time flew by, and 5 years had passed in the blink of an eye. Everything had changed. In the great battle of Soul Society, Death God finally annihilated Quincy after much effort. However, Death God's side was also seriously injured, and the entire Soul Society was almost destroyed. All the captains, including the head captain, were seriously injured. What Dustless cared about the most was not the Quincy, but the major incident that happened a day ago. As expected, they were resurrected early. In the modern world, Dustless, who was leaning on the sofa, muttered to himself. Just yesterday, all the Quincy in the world, only those with impure bloodlines, died inexplicably. Dustless knew that this was Yawach's doing. Shaking his head, he did not think about it anymore. Dustless also had no choice. Yawach was hiding in the dark, and his exact location was unknown. He could only wait silently for the day Yawach made his move. However, that old man must be about to explode. After a while, Dustless's lips curled up, revealing a gloating smile. The complete annihilation of Wandless Empire was enough to make Yawach vomit blood. Although Yawach could resurrect everyone with the Saint ability, that was only if there were enough souls. He had just been resurrected, and he already needed to extract the power of Quincy to recover his strength, let alone resurrecting the Stern Ritter. Even if he could do it, he was powerless. At this moment, within the Wandless Empire, a figure was gritting his teeth in anger as he looked at the desolate ice palace. Who did this? Hysterical howls that contained overflowing hostility spread out, causing the entire world to tremble. The scene was especially horrifying. This person had long black hair and a beard. He had a deep and ferocious appearance. His eyes were red, and his expression was frightening. He had 3 silver medals on his collar, and he wore a dark red cloak. It was Yawach. "Your Majesty, this is all my fault." Behind him stood a golden-haired man. He was slender, handsome, and had a noble aura. He was Jugram, who had been killed by Dustless 5 years ago. However, Jugram was far too important to Yaoch. Even though Yaoch's current strength and soul were insufficient, he still forcibly used Saint to revive him. However, this made Yaoch, who had just regained consciousness, even more fragile. The person who started all this is called Dustless. He controlled Ligia and purposely exposed our tracks to Soul Society. I had no choice but to order the Stern Ritter Knights to launch a sneak attack on Soul Society to seize the initiative. Unfortunately, I was no match for that man, and was killed by him. Jugram said helplessly. His tone was filled with disappointment. Even you were no match for him. Yaoch was stunned when he heard this. The ferocity in his eyes was extinguished. He muttered, "If that's the case, your failure is understandable. You were no match for him, and those useless pawns were no match for him either. It's normal for them to be annihilated." Yaoch had no doubts about Jugram's strength. Otherwise, he would not have ordered Jugram to be his personal guard. "What should we do now, Your Majesty?" "Your Majesty," Jugram asked with a headache. Now that Yaoch had just been resurrected, he was even weaker than before. "Then I will bear with it for now and take a step back. When I regain my full strength in the future, I will cut that Shinigami who ruined my plans into pieces." Yaoch screamed like a ghost. Time passed quickly and a few years passed. Shinozuki Ichigo gradually grew up and, unfortunately, because of Dustless's instigation, he became Aizen Sosuke's research target. Can the power of Hollow, Shinigami, and Quincy really exceed the limit? Aizen Sosuke muttered to himself in the dark underground laboratory of Soul Society. Of course. Hogyoku let out a dazzling light. Dustless, who was disguised as Hogyoku's consciousness, said, "Now is the time to awaken Shinozaki Ichigo's power." Aizen nodded and did as he was told. He instinctively thought that he had tamed Hogyoku. "It seems that my plan should begin." Dustless, who was far away in the modern world, had a lot of thoughts. He had already colluded with Urahara Kasuke, and everything was ready. They were just waiting for Aizen Sosuke to awaken Shinozaki Ichigo's power. Chapter 1134. Over the years, Dustless disguised himself as Hogyoku's consciousness and often bewitched Aizen, and many impossible things became possible. As a result, Aizen was led by the nose by Dustless without knowing it. There is no suitable candidate for the Shinigami in the modern world. In the dark laboratory, Aizen observed Soul Society through the crystal screen, and from time to time, he would choose a suitable Shinigami. "Let Rukia go." After a while, Dustless disguised himself as Hogyoku's consciousness said. Aizen heard this, and a young girl immediately appeared in his mind. He frowned and said, "She seems kind. If she's not the Hollow's opponent, it would be bad." "It doesn't matter." Hogyoku's consciousness explained, "I think she's just right. She has a kind heart. If it's someone else, they might not lend the power of Shinigami to Shinozaki Ichigo." "You're right, I neglected it." Sosuke Aizen nodded and agreed with Hogyoku's idea. He immediately went to Central 46 to give orders. The modern world, in the villa he robbed. Dustless looked at the star badge in his hand. The quality was exquisite, shining, and filled with a special power. It looked very mysterious. This was the star badge that Quincy used to steal the Shinigami's Bankai. Jugram left me something good. I thought I would need to use the system to steal Captain Yamamoto's Bankai, but it seems that I don't need it anymore. Dustless looked at the star badge in his hand and smiled viciously. Once he took the Bankai, it would be a huge blow to him. The strongest Shinigami was only in name. At the same time, 3 days later, Rukia came to Kozaku as Dustless expected. Aizen deliberately magnified the hollow to get close to Ichigo, and Rukia, who detected the presence of the Grand Hollow, gradually approached the Kurosaki family. Dustless hid in the dark and silently observed this scene. "Eo-eo-eo." The hysterical roar resounded through the sky. Shinozaki Ichigo, who was born with strong spiritual power, immediately noticed this abnormality. He saw the invading great void through the window and quickly ran downstairs. Is that Kurosaki Ichigo? Dustless thought to himself as he hid in the alleyway, revealing half of his face. An orange-haired youth came into view. His appearance and temperament were ordinary. The first impression he gave others was that he was asking for a beating. No wonder this brat always attracts a group of people to beat him up. Dustless pursed his lips. The first impression that Kurosaki Ichigo gave people was that he was a delinquent and very arrogant. Puchi, Puchi, Puchi. The grand voids that rushed over were obviously not a match for Rukia, and they were all cleansed in no time. Dustless could not help but be stunned by her straightforward manner. That idiot Sosuke Aizen. The current Ruki is no longer the same as before. Her slash and transient steps have improved tremendously. Dustless frowned. If this continues, the chances of awakening Kurosaki Ichigo's death god power will be 0. Kakaka! The void behind him suddenly exploded, and a powerful grand voids came out from it. Dustless deliberately opened the black cavity and released the grand voids to besiege Rukia. Until she was exhausted. Boom boom boom. A large Jillian came out from it, and a giant flash came out from its mouth. The dark sky was dyed red, and it was filled with a demonic luster of destruction. The target was not Rukia, but Kurosaki Ichigo. This damn Jillian just doesn't listen to me. Seeing this, Dustless's heart sank. He looked at Rukia, who was wiping her sweat, and his heart fell to the bottom. He was sure that Rukia would not be able to withstand Jillian's void flash. She was too immature now. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Dustless was pondering, and a giant flash came down and blasted towards Kurosaki Ichigo. Seeing such a scene, Dustless could not help but feel nervous. After thinking for a while, he decided to help Kurosaki Ichigo. This kid was too important now, and he could not die. Dustless's pupils spun rapidly, and he suppressed his pupil power to the minimum and focused on the falling void flash. Mahabharata. An undetectable repulsive force spread out, and the void flash was blown away. Its trajectory was suddenly changed, and it smashed towards the other side of the street. Coincidentally, a good-looking middle-aged woman was carrying vegetables home. What's going on? Kurosaki Ichigo was shocked, and he instinctively looked at the direction where the void flash fell. After seeing the middle-aged woman, his face changed, and he used all his strength to shout, "Go away, Mom!" Dustless was stunned by Kurosaki Ichigo's deafening voice. "Mom!" Dustless opened his eyes wide, and while everyone's attention was on the void flash, he floated in the air and saw a female figure in the direction of the void flash. Kurosaki Manori was taken away by Dustless, and now this Quincy's mother's surname was also Kurosaki. Boom boom boom. The falling void flash mercilessly hit Kurosaki Ichigo's mother, taking her life. Her whole body turned into a charred corpse in the middle of the street. Her heart had completely stopped, and she was burned beyond recognition by the void flash. It's really an accident this time. When I came, there was no one there. Dustless was speechless, and he was sweating profusely. Such a huge mistake was beyond his expectations. Who would have thought that such an accident would happen for a small matter? He subconsciously looked at Kurosaki Ichigo, and his face changed. Chapter 1135. Shinozaki Ichigo's face was distorted, and his eyes were bloodshot. He looked around and found the Zanpakudo in Rukia's hand. He directly snatched it away and then pounced on Jillian fiercely. "You're brave, but you're still too weak," Dustless said lightly. Jillian wasn't worth mentioning, but to Shinozaki Ichigo, he was a monster. "This guy can see me, and he snatched my Zanpakudo?" Rukia's sweat-stained little face was full of sluggishness. She was so shocked that she couldn't speak clearly. She subconsciously touched her hands, but her hands were empty. She stared blankly at Shinozaki Ichigo, who was hysterically slashing towards Mainaka. "Human, come back!" Rukia shouted loudly, and at the same time, she used Shuinpa and instantly appeared in front of Shinozaki Ichigo. "Give me back my Zanpakudo." Rukia's face was filled with anger. This human is so bold. She, a Shinigami, was robbed of her Zanpakuto by a mere human. It's simply a shame. Get out of my way. Shinozaki Ichigo gasped and shouted with red eyes. She killed my mother, I want revenge. Stupid. Rukia was stunned when she heard this, and she scolded with a straight face. If I were you, I would go and save her, maybe there's still a chance of survival. Although she said that, Rukia was sure that Shinozaki Ichigo's mother was dead. It must be Jillian's faint, and there was no chance of survival. She said that in hopes that Shinozaki Ichigo would give up his obsession. After all, Jillian was far from what a human could compete with. Bang! Shinozaki Ichigo quickly dropped his Zanpakuto and ran to his mother's side. Unfortunately, he was destined to be disappointed. At this moment, his mother's body had turned into a pile of charcoal. I didn't do it on purpose, I was saving you, otherwise, you would be the one who died. Dustless looked calm, and at the same time, he comforted himself. This guy is really something, he actually threw my Zanpakuto on the ground. Forget it, it doesn't suit your taste. Pouting her small mouth, she glared at Kurosaki Ichigo with dissatisfaction. When Rukia turned around, a violent wind suddenly came, and she was caught off guard and was blown away. Bang! Rukia's petite body was smashed against the wall. Her face was as pale as snow. She looked at the approaching Jillian and wanted to stand up, but her terrible physical condition made her unable to move. Ao ao ao! The heart-wrenching roar came again, and Shinozaki Ichigo's body suddenly shivered, and he ran to Rukia's side and picked up the cold Zanpakuto again. Holding the knife, his mind was filled with only one voice. Chop the monster in front of him into pieces. Not bad. Rukia gave a rare compliment, and then sighed heavily. I'm deeply sympathetic to your mother's plight, but I have to remind you that humans are still humans. They can't fight against the greater void, especially this kind of Jillian. I don't care. I have to kill him and avenge my mother. I don't care even if I have to sacrifice my life. Shinozaki Ichigo roared hoarsely and his body was trembling. He actually has the resolve to perish together with us. Hearing this, Rukia's gem-like eyes flashed. She felt the constantly collapsing ground, and looking at the source, the unconscious Jillian was close at hand. If you want to kill him, it's actually possible, but I'll lend you the power of the Shinigami to fight against him. It's finally finished. There are still so many variables. In the distance, Dustless, who heard this, breathed a sigh of relief. When he turned around and was about to leave leisurely, the footsteps of an uninvited guest immediately floated in front of him. So it's you. Seeing this, Dustless grinned and said lightly, It seems that you saw it just now. I won't explain. If I said that I didn't do it on purpose, would you believe me? The person who came was a middle-aged uncle with a face full of stubble. At first glance, he didn't look very handsome, but the more you look at him, the more interesting and charming he became. This person was the former captain of the 10th Division, now called Shinozaki Ichigo. If I trusted you, I wouldn't have brought him here. Shinozaki Ichigo's face was expressionless as he waved the tachi in his hand. His actions explained everything. That's true. I've wasted my breath. Dustless stopped talking and pointed at Shinozaki Ichigo's situation. If I were you, I'd go and save my son first. Otherwise, if he dies, your Shiba family will have no descendants. But I'll help you adopt your 2 daughters. Dustless's lips curled up high. It was hard not to think that he was as cunning as a fox. You're looking for death. Hearing this, Shinozaki Ichigo's killing intent rose. His family was his reverse scale, and Dustless took away his wife's life just like that. Now, he wasn't even going to let go of his daughters. How could he remain calm? How could he swallow this insult? A cold light came towards him. Shinozaki Ichigo's speed was unimaginably fast. How surprising. You're still so fast even after losing the power of the Shinigami. Your battle consciousness hasn't been destroyed. Dustless's eyes rippled as he spoke calmly. In an instant, Shinozaki Ishin, who was holding the hilt of his sword with both hands, pounced forward. His arms exerted force, and the moment the white light came down, Wu-chen grabbed the sword god and threw Shinozaki Ishin away. Crack, crack, crack. Many cracks appeared on the wall. Shinozaki Ichigo's expression was ugly as he sank into the cracks. He looked at Dustless with determination. This is spiritual pressure? You should have lost the power of the Shinigami. Frowning, Dustless locked his gaze on Shinozaki Ichigo. After sensing carefully for a moment, he quickly realized that something was wrong. This didn't belong to the Shinigami. Chapter 1136. In the past, Shinozaki Ishin fought Dustless with all his might and lost all his power. He still hadn't recovered, and this violent, murderous spiritual pressure was completely different from the death gods. You're really unscrupulous in order to take revenge. Dustless smiled as he looked at Shinozaki Ishin, who was surrounded by a red light. This dense murderous intent was extremely scary, and those who didn't have a strong will would start hallucinating. Dustless stared at Ishin, who was being swallowed by the bone mask, and said meaningfully, "You've released the power of the greater void in your body. This is a big problem. Although you can still fight, you should know the consequences. Without the suppression of the death god's power, you'll become a greater void in no time." Roar! Shinozaki Ishin let out a sharp roar. At this moment, his face was completely unrecognizable. His eyes were bloodshot, and his body was filled with murderous intent. So what? As long as I can die with you, I don't care. Shinozaki Ishin gritted his teeth and said word by word. His hatred for Dustless was as deep as the ocean. If it weren't for him, he wouldn't have lost the power of the death god. If it weren't for him, his wife and family wouldn't be in danger. The main culprit of everything was Dustless. Bring it on. Seeing that Shinozaki Ishin was determined to fight him, Dustless didn't want to waste time talking. He hooked his finger at Shinozaki Ishin, and his expression was full of provocation. Shoo shoo shoo. Seeing this, Shinozaki Ishin's expression turned serious. His feet collapsed on the ground, and a shocking crack appeared. Boom boom boom. There was a sudden gust of wind from the left. Wuchen turned his head and saw a claw that was sharper than a knife coming at his head. It was a ruthless attack. Dustless didn't dodge. His body emitted a warm glow that was as dazzling as the sun. The claws that came in contact with Dustless's body instantly lost their effect. Not effective? Shinozaki Ishin, who was being swallowed by the greater void's violent spiritual pressure, couldn't help but pause. You want to kill me? No problem, but this place is not suitable for fighting. You don't want your son and daughter to get involved in our fight, do you? Dustless casually waved his hand, and a crescent-shaped long and narrow button appeared in the void. He leaped into it. Even if it's the 18th level of hell, I'll accompany you once. Witnessing the bottomless abyss, Shinozaki Ishin followed Dustless into it. The grudge between them ran deep, and now that Dustless had indirectly caused the death of his wife, Shinozaki Ishin was enraged, whether it was intentional or not. I would rather die in glory than live in dishonor. The mysterious dark space was very narrow. In just a few breaths of time, Shinozaki had tracked down a strange yet familiar world. Wind and sand filled the sky. There was no sunlight, and not even a blade of grass grew. Dazzling withered bones were hidden in the wind and sand. This is, after looking around, Shinozaki Ishin's surging killing intent stopped for a moment. He said in a low voice, "This looks like Hueco Mundo." That's right. This is Hueco Mundo, and also the place where you died. Although it's not a beautiful place, it's still a field of withered bones. You won't have to worry about being lonely when you step into the underworld. At least you'll have someone to accompany you on the road to the underworld. Dustless chuckled. His body was like a gust of wind, floating in the sky. The wind and waves that came from all directions circled around Dustless's body. It was extremely mysterious. Even if I die, I'll drag you down with me. Shinozaki Ishin's face darkened. The spiritual pressure of the great void in his body once again played the prelude to destruction. In the blink of an eye, a huge red energy ball was formed. After he was bitten by white void, it's not surprising that he was affected by the power of the great void. However, it's surprising that he can control the power of the void so skillfully. Whether it's the reverberation spin, just now or the Void Flash. Now, they've all reached the point of perfection. A Grim Reaper who lost the power of the Grim Reaper has mastered the power of the Void to the peak. How ironic. Dustless muttered in his heart. At the same time, a translucent wall slowly formed. Binding path number 81, sky shattering. The red light illuminated the entire world. The huge energy ball continued to expand. When the spiritual droplets floating in the void could not withstand the violent void flash and evaporated, Shinozaki Ishin used all his strength to throw out the terrifying void flash. Swish, swish, swish. The void flash disappeared in an instant. Dustless, who had excellent eyesight, could see everything clearly. This was the first time he had seen such an exaggerated void flash. It turned the entire sky red, giving people the illusion that a huge piece of the sky was pressing down on them. The destructive power shattered the translucent barrier as if it did not exist. It shattered with a single poke and directly pounced on Dustless's face. Boom, boom, boom. The red flame tube exploded with a bang. The sky within a radius of 10 miles shook violently. The entire world seemed to be shaking. It was very frightening. After the explosion, the invisible shockwave was even more powerful. It swept away all the life forms in the Hueco Mundo. The weak great voids were directly shattered into pieces. Where is he? Shinozaki Ishin expanded his spiritual pressure and found Dustless's spiritual pressure. Dustless walked out of the flame and scathed and teased, that was really dangerous just now. If it weren't for the fact that I have countless abilities, I might have been torn to pieces by you. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The void trembled, and Shinozaki Ishin disappeared without a trace. Then I'll have to ask you to die now. The void behind Dustless rippled. Shinozaki Ishin, who was holding a sharp ancient sword, flashed and slashed at his head with all his strength. You can kill me if you want, but at least look up. Dustless pointed at the sky and smiled mysteriously. Shinozaki Ishin was stunned. He instinctively looked at the sky. His eyes were filled with shock and astonishment. What the hell is that? Why are there so many of them? Chapter 1137. Shinozaki Ishin stared blankly at the mysterious redwood falling from the sky. He couldn't help but stare blankly. The huge amount of wood and the area they covered made his heart skip a beat. Even his hatred for Dustless had lessened because of these things that appeared out of nowhere. There are so many pieces of wood, and they cover the entire sky. How did this guy get them? Shinozaki Ishin's eyes widened. He was so shocked that he even forgot about Dustless in front of him. Suddenly, he smelled the scent of death and shuddered. His gaze immediately returned to Dustless. He thought to himself, no matter what, he is the one who cast the spell. As long as I kill this guy, the danger before me will naturally be resolved. Shinozaki Ishin's brain cells spun rapidly. He immediately made up his mind. He drew out a huge amount of spiritual pressure from his body. It was as vast as the ocean. His special white broadsword glowed with a blood-red glow. You want to take this opportunity to kill me? Dustless, who knew Shinozaki Ishin's intention, was both angry and amused. Shinozaki Ishin was delusional enough to think that he could turn the tables in such a short time. His brain must have been fried by the flames of revenge. He immediately formed a seal with both hands. The falling redwood became even faster. He shouted, "Immortal spell, bright god gate." Swish, swish. The thousands of redwood circles seemed to have become tens of thousands of times heavier. Their speed increased by a few times in an instant. Under Dustless's control, they all flew towards Shinozaki Ishin mercilessly. At the same time, Shinozaki Ishin's white broadsword had obviously reached its limit. A blood-red glow could be seen clearly. It gathered and did not dissipate. The red glow was soul-stirring and sharp. Shinozaki Ishin glared at Dustless ferociously. He recalled the hatred he had for all these years. He swung the blood-red glow in his hand and shouted, "Die!" Swish, swish. The red slash was coming towards Shinozaki Ishin with boundless power. The color was as demonic and frightening as human blood. Dustless sized up the incoming slash expressionlessly. He floated in the sky quietly as if nothing existed. His pitch-black eyes were very calm. Just as the slash was about to swallow Dustless, the redwood circles arrived as expected. Bang bang bang. In the nick of time, the red divine wood destroyed it. Wave after wave of attacks directly smashed the slash into pieces. What was most shocking was that the redwood was like an invisible mouth. The slash didn't even explode, and the spiritual pressure was absorbed by it while it was still alive. Gulp. Even with Shinozaki's strong mentality, he could not help but sob. Shock replaced the weathered look on his face. This thing can absorb my spiritual pressure? Shinozaki growled absent-mindedly. His words were filled with astonishment. Looking at his dazed expression, it was as if his worldview had collapsed, and his thoughts were in a mess. You should thank me for taking a fancy to your son. After a long time, ripples spread out in the boundless sky. Dustless's voice gathered beside Shinozaki Ishin's ears and lingered for a long time. After all, he is the most outstanding test subject. His future achievements will far surpass yours. Dustless was very confident, with an expression that said, "You should thank me." Roar, roar, roar. The unique roar of the great void erupted again. Shinozaki Ishin's eyes gradually lost the wisdom that a human should have, replaced by endless killing intent and hatred, as well as many negative emotions. Shinozaki Ishin knew that he did not have much time left. If he did not take care of Dustless quickly, he would fall into the void and completely lose his humanity. Void Flash. The red flash swept across, carrying with it Shinozaki Ishin's anger and hatred. The scene was spectacular, and the thick beam of light almost covered the entire sky. You reckless thing. I wanted to let you live a little longer, but you're so untactful. Since you want to die so badly, I'll send you to the netherworld immediately to reunite with your wife. With a cold expression, Dustless's body floated with light and dove toward the incoming beam of light. Has this guy gone mad? Seeing this, Shinozaki Ishin was shocked. Facing Void Flash, Dustless did not dodge. Instead, he charged toward Void Flash head-on. He was simply courting death. However, in the next second, Shinozaki Ishin understood the reason. The moment he came into close contact with Void Flash, Dustless's entire body turned into light. His entire body shone with a bright light, and Void Flash could not attack him at all. In the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of Shinozaki Ishin. His empty right hand glowed, and the outline of a shining sword vaguely appeared. He shouted, "Sky Sword of Clouds." Dustless was like the sun in the sky. His expression was cold. Then, under Shinozaki Ishin's shocked gaze, the golden light slashed down. Puchi. Shinozaki Ishin's entire body was split in half by Dustless. His method was extremely cruel. His purplish-red blood dyed the ground of the void circle red. Seeing this, Dustless did not give up. A pink circular flame flew out of his right hand. Path of Destruction 54, Flame Destruction. The circular flame flew out and locked onto Shinozaki Ishin, who was split in half on the ground. Boom boom boom. The ground was set ablaze, and a huge mushroom cloud rose into the sky. Shinozaki Ishin, who was split in half, disappeared with the wind. Not even his body was left behind. Idiot, you were no match for me before. Now that you've lost your Shinigami's power, how can you be my match? It seems that hatred has indeed burned your brain, Shiba Ishin. Dustless glanced at the shadow that disappeared with the wind. His expression returned to its usual coldness. Chapter 1138. Dustless opened the door to the modern world and stepped into it. Just as he was about to leave Hueco Mundo, he felt a gust of wind behind him, followed by a sharp pain in his heart. Pucci! The ice-cold long saber minced Dustless's internal organs, ending his life in an instant. He turned his head around and saw Shinozaki Ishin in perfect condition. You bastard, you should be dead already. Dustless clenched his teeth and stared at Shinozaki Ishin with bloodshot eyes. And this is... He opened his eyes wide and looked at the katana in his chest. It was obviously not the katana that belonged to Voids. It was a zanpakudo from head to toe. Impossible, you should have lost the power of the Shinigami. How can you still have a zanpakudo? Dustless exclaimed. His tone had lost its usual calmness. God's plan is better than man's. I did lose the power of the Shinigami to escape from you. But I also regained another power. Shinozaki Ishin smiled and said, I did lose all my power at that time, but because of the void, I regained my power. The power of the Shinigami and the void have both returned. The void? Hearing this, Wu Chen's face sank. His eyes flickered as he said, You mean the void created by Aizen Muzu? The one created with the soul of the Shinigami as the foundation? So it was void white. Dustless understood how Shinozaki Ishin regained the power of the Shinigami. Because Void White was able to use the power of the Shinigami, Shinozaki Ishin, who fused with Void White, naturally obtained the power of the Shinigami and the Shinigami. I underestimated you. You purposely hid the power of the Shinigami just to bait me? Dustless suddenly understood Shinozaki Ishin's intention. He cursed himself for being careless. That's right. Shinozaki Ishin nodded and said, I fought with you before, so I know how scary you are. That's why I had to find another way to deal with you. So you were faking everything just now? Dustless asked in a hoarse voice. There's nothing I can do about it. The reason is that you're too terrifying. Shinozaki Ishin sneered, and the spiritual pressure that belonged to the Grim Reaper in his body surged again. Thanks to you, I've obtained the power of the Grim Reaper and the Void, which is commonly known as the Mask. I've also been fortunate enough to obtain the ability of enhanced regeneration. I underestimated you. Lowering his head, Wu Chen confessed to this without hiding anything. Of course, don't think that you can kill a former captain so easily. Shinozaki Ishin's spiritual pressure rose rapidly, and his entire body was filled with a scorching aura. He roared, Don't think that this is the end. Buzz, buzz, buzz. As soon as Shinozaki Ishin finished speaking, the ground began to tremble, and a giant blade-shaped flame appeared on the ground. 96 of the Tao of Destruction, 1 blade cremation. The gigantic blade-shaped flame pulverized the soft sand. An unprecedentedly gigantic blade of light instantly rose from the ground. Sensing the terrifying temperature that could even melt the sky, Shinozaki decisively pulled out his blade and retreated. Boom, boom, boom. The flaming blade exploded, evaporating the remaining spiritual droplets in the air. An incomparably thick pillar of fire rose from the ground into the air. It was a shocking distance of a few hundred meters. This should be the end. Seeing this, Shinozaki Ishin heaved a sigh of relief. Sensing the disappearance of Dustless's spiritual pressure, he smiled in relief. His long-cherished wish of many years had been fulfilled. The shackles that bound his body also disappeared, and his body felt exceptionally light. What is that? A blinding golden light suddenly swept across the sky, so bright that Shinozaki Ishin could not open his eyes. Within the flames, a gigantic figure appeared. The golden figure was as majestic as a mountain peak, reaching straight into the clouds. It was covered in heavy armor that looked ancient. The 2 golden katanas on its waist were dozens of meters long, and it sent chills down one's spine. Especially the ferocious Tengu armor, it made one shudder in fear. What the hell is this? Shinozaki Ishin muttered to himself in disbelief. He tensed up, and he could acutely sense a murderous aura locking onto him. The boiling murderous aura made him feel as if he had fallen into hell. It is impressive that you are so smart. A cold and magnetic voice came from the top of the monster's head. Shinozaki raised his head and looked over. What he saw was Dustless. His expression was cold, and his shining eyes were filled with admiration. He seemed to admire Shinozaki Ishin's intelligence. It was not easy to achieve this. How is this possible? I should have crushed his internal organs. How is he still alive? And he is completely fine. Shinozaki Ishin's face was extremely pale, and his hands that were holding the zanpakudo were trembling. Clang. A loud explosion attracted Ishin's attention. Ken Susanoo perfect form pulled out the blade of his katana, and a golden light swept out from the tip of the katana. Shoo shoo shoo. The chilling wind from the katana killed Shinozaki Ishin, and it covered the sky and shattered the earth. A crack that was dozens of kilometers long appeared on the land of Hueco Mundo. Shinozaki Ishin was chopped into pieces, and there was nothing left of him. Why aren't you using super regeneration now? Idiot! Dispelling Kensusunu, Dustless sneered. The chilling wind from the katana still had some characteristics, and it was impossible for Shinozaki Ishin to continue creating something out of nothing. Crack crack. Dustless opened his mouth again, and just as he was about to leave, the sky distorted, and an unexpected figure appeared. It's you, what's the matter? Dustless asked coldly, and his face was filled with confusion. After living in the modern world for a few years, he had a lot of interactions with the person in front of him, and they were in a relationship where they used each other. Chapter 1139. This person was Dustless's future ally, Urahara Kisuk. It's you? Urahara Kisuk looked at Wuchen with doubt in his surprised tone. He immediately looked at the exaggerated crack on the ground, and his eyes almost fell out of their sockets. Who did this? Urahara Kisuk was like being struck by lightning. His mind was in chaos. The crack in the ground that was attacked by Kensusunu seemed to split the entire Hueco Mundo into two. It was extremely shocking. It was the first time in Urahara Kisuk's life to see such a dreamy scene. This, looking at the torn Hueco Mundo below, it was as terrifying as a natural disaster. Dustless said calmly, I happened to encounter a Vasto Lord before, so I killed him. Hearing this, Urahara Kisuk's expression suddenly froze. What did he mean by killing him? He couldn't help but feel sorry for Vasto Lord who was just killed by Dustless. It gave people the feeling that he had casually killed Jillian. What's the matter? Seeing Urahara Kisuk motionless, Dustless asked, If there's nothing else, I'll go first. Urahara Kisuk couldn't help but look up at Dustless, licked his dry tongue, looked at his back and asked, Are we still allies in the same boat? Of course. Dustless replied directly without thinking, Now, and in the future, we only have one enemy at present, Aizen Sosuke. Waving his hand to open Hueco Mundo, Dustless stepped into it and merged with the darkness. Then the broken black space began to heal. In the cold and desolate void, only Urahara Kisuk was left alone, silent. Ka. After a while, a dazzling white light swept past Urahara Kisuk, showing the outline of a crossing gate, and then a wheat-colored young woman stepped out of it. Her figure was curvaceous and very hot. Miss Yaichi. Urahara Kisuk was stunned for a moment before he said, Is the group of people from the Masked Legion okay? Fortunately, they escaped quickly in the last battle of Soul Society. Otherwise, it would have been a disaster. His condition is not bad. Saifeng's courtyard Yi nodded and gave Urahara Kisuk a comforting look, indicating that he didn't need to worry. Immediately, his face inevitably became gloomy, and his wrinkled little face lost its former brilliance. He looked very decadent and worried. But then again, is it really reliable to cooperate with that guy? Why do I feel like they're colluding with each other? Dustless's back appeared in his mind. Those deep eyes could devour people's minds, making it impossible for people to understand what he was thinking. To be honest, I have the same feeling. Urahara Kisuk shrugged and sighed heavily. Not only are they colluding with each other, they are clearly leading the wolf into the house. If we don't control it well, we'll be swallowed alive sooner or later. After hearing Ye's question, Urahara Kisuk said, But even if we're walking on a tightrope on the cliff, we can only brace ourselves. If we go against that guy, we'll be annihilated in an instant. After that, Urahara Kisuk looked down at the Hueco Mundo destroyed by Kensusenu's perfect form and didn't speak for a long time. We can only take one step at a time. I hope we're right. Saifeng's courtyard Yi was also very melancholy. They wanted to resist Dustless, but their confidence was shattered by the tens of kilometers long crack on the ground. If they resist Aizen Sosuke, even if they're not his opponent, they still have a way to retreat. But if they resist Dustless, they'll be annihilated on the spot. They have no choice but to follow Dustless to the end. But at least we're safe for the time being. As that guy said, our current enemy is the same, and that's Aizen Sosuke. After a while, Urahara Kisuke breathed a sigh of relief. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. This is also a blessing in disguise. Looks like it's done. In the modern world, Dustless wandered around the vicinity of Shinozaki Ichigo's house, searching for traces of the Great Void. The spiritual pressure of Jillian that he released previously had already disappeared with the wind, and there was still a lot of dust on the ground. How cruel. He actually cut Jillian into 8 pieces. Dustless's sharp eyes immediately understood that this was Kurosaki Ichigo's doing. His gaze fell on the head of the boy in the rain. The rain from the sky drenched Kurosaki Ichigo's clothes. At this moment, he was expressionless, and the whole world was looking at him coldly. He was very disappointed. Shinozaki Ichigo was wearing the Death Tyrant suit and stood alone in the world of rain. There were still blood stains on his zanpakuto. Seeing this, Dustless's cold heart remained unmoved. Perhaps he had become immune after doing so many bad things, and human emotions were gradually drifting away from him. Next, it's your turn, Rukia. Taking a deep look at Rukia, who fainted due to excessive fatigue, Dustless turned around and left. The next step is to continue to persuade Aizen Sosuke to send people to capture Rukia, and then take the opportunity to lure Shinozaki Ichigo into Soul Society. Returning to the villa he robbed, Dustless first took a bath, then went to bed and slept. Soon, he would take the opportunity to sneak into Soul Society and take advantage of the chaos caused by Kurosaki Ichigo's invasion of Soul Society. He would use the star badge he stole from Jugram to sneak into the first team and steal the bankai of the captain. Chapter 1140. Soul Society's Central Room 46. This was where Sosuke Aizen frequented. He used a special channel to monitor the place he wanted to monitor. Phew, looks like it's finally done. On the LCD screen, Sosuke Aizen looked at Shinozaki Ichigo with a satisfied smile. It's not done yet. The surface of the Hogyoku flashed with light, and Dustless disguised as its consciousness continued. We still need to lure that idiot Shinozaki Ichigo to Soul Society. That's right. Sosuke Aizen nodded, then touched his eyes and whispered, leave this to Kuchiki Byakuya. If he knows that Rukia passed the power of Shinigami to Shinozaki Ichigo, he will be furious. Yes, he is the kind of person who cares about his reputation. He will be eager to capture Rukia, but there is no need to expose the news in advance. At least let Shinozaki Ichigo get used to the power of Shinigami. Dustless disguised as Hogyoku's consciousness said. Makes sense. Time flew, and in the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. In the dark central room 46. Everyone. Kuchiki Byakuya looked around at the sages with no expression. Perhaps because they were all nobles, there was a rare touch of vitality in his tone. He asked in confusion, why did you call me here? What is it? Rukia lent the power of Shinigami to a mere human. As the patriarch of the Kuchiki family, you should give us an explanation. A sage said sternly. This is a big problem. Another sage also chimed in. She must be arrested immediately and sentenced to death. That's right, that kind of person is a disgrace to Soul Society. A large group of sages began to attack Rukia. Their voices were as harsh as flies, and it echoed in Kuchiki Byakuya's ears for a long time. Does anyone have any evidence? Shimubaya asked calmly as a strange glint flashed across his eyes. Of course. On the huge square crystal screen, the scene of Rukia inserting the zanpakuto into Shinozaki Ichigo's body flashed, and all the power of Shinigami was transferred. Kurosaki Ichigo also transformed and carried a huge zanpakuto. No problem, I will go and capture him. I will definitely give everyone an explanation. The dignity of Soul Society will not be trampled on by a human. Shimubaya said coldly, his tone decisive, his cold eyes devoid of any human emotions. Goodbye. As soon as he finished speaking, Shimubaya also disappeared without a trace and retreated outside of Central Room 46. Without a doubt, Central Room 46 was wiped out many years ago. Naturally, it was Sosuke Aizen who secretly controlled it. This self-righteous idiot. Outside Central Room 46, Dustless quietly stared at Kumu Baye's back. He despised him in his heart before heading to the first squad's quarters. After being a captain for a while, Dustless was quite familiar with Soul Society's location. A few minutes later, he arrived at the first team's quarters. Defense seems to be very lazy. Have you all forgotten the painful lessons that Soul Society suffered in the past? Observation hockey vaguely swept through everyone. The members of the first team looked very lazy, all of them were listless. Glancing at everyone, Dustless stepped into the team house of the first team. His body turned into a gust of wind. These people with low strength simply thought that a gust of wind swept past. Who is it? Stop. The thunderous roar went into Wu Chen's ears, which made him temporarily lose his sense of hearing. His ears were buzzing. Or you dare to break into the first squad? You have guts. About 10 feet ahead, a white-haired Shinigami in black blocked Dustless's path. Looking closely, this person was the deputy captain of the first squad, the Shinigami who had accompanied Yamamoto for thousands of years, Head Sparrow Jiro. Who is this guy? I seem to have seen him before. Head Sparrow Jiro muttered in his heart while pulling out his Zanpakuto. Dustless was wearing a silver mask, so he couldn't distinguish his appearance, but he always felt that the outline of his figure was familiar. At the same time, the Shinigami around also heard the news and surrounded Dustless. A large group of people came to die. Red light shot out of his eyes, and the people who were swept by it were creepy. Dustless's eyes stared, and a sharp wave of deterrence broke out of his body. The Shinigami who were affected all fell to the ground, foaming at the mouth, losing consciousness, and were stunned by Haushika Haki. What the hell is this trick? He killed so many Shinigami without moving. Looking around, Head Sparrow Jiro was surprised to find that he was the only one left. The other Shinigami were killed in an instant, and he was the most conspicuous among them. Worthy of being the Shinigami who has followed the head captain for thousands of years. Seeing that Head Sparrow Jiro was not put down, Dustless gave him a look of admiration and immediately rushed to Head Sparrow Jiro's side in an instant. Pucci. Even if he realized Dustless's attack for the first time, Head Sparrow Jiro pulled out his sword to resist, and a fatal wound appeared on his chest, and he was instantly killed. Your reaction is good, but your speed is still too slow. Glancing at Head Sparrow Jiro indifferently, Dustless stepped over his body. Chapter 1141. Even though Jiro was a vice-captain, he had followed Yamamoto for nearly 1,000 years, and he was also a rare genius. It took him only 30 days to learn the Bankai, which showed his extraordinary talent. But these were all just fancy for Dustless. The difference between them was too big. You didn't die. You are really tenacious. In fact, you can avoid the disaster by lying down quietly. Suddenly feeling that his right foot was caught, Dustless turned his head and happened to see Jiro, who looked pale but refused to give up. Even though his chest was bleeding, and his ribs and heart were exposed to the air, he still refused to let Dustless go. This courage was worthy of respect. Since you want to die so much, I will fulfill your wish. The golden broadsword was raised again, and when he was about to cut down, looking at Jiro's determined expression, Dustless suddenly put down his hands. Of course, it was not because he was influenced by Jiro. TSK, Vice Captain of Sparrow Tribe, I want to thank you. Because of you, I suddenly thought of a good idea. His eyeballs were rolling, glowing with bright colors. What are you going to do? Being stared at by Dustless's shining eyes, Jiro was also a man who had lived for thousands of years. Seeing Dustless's cunning eyes, he smelled a strong sense of crisis. Suddenly, he felt that it would be better if he died. What am I going to do? You will know soon. Regardless of how Jiro struggled, Dustless picked him up and went straight to the team house that was usually used for the captain's meeting. Strange, why is my right eye twitching recently? Looking at the picturesque scenery of Soul Society in the distance, Yamamoto frowned slightly. His body, which was leaning on a crutch, looked particularly old under the sunset. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A burst of wind came at a fast speed. Yamamoto's puzzled expression suddenly disappeared, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. "How dare you break into the first team? Who are you?" Yamamoto said sternly. Combined with the scars all over his head, he was extremely imposing. "Sparrow Tribe." Staring at the figure in the mysterious man's right arm, Head Captain Yamamoto's eyes almost popped out of his sockets. He almost roared, "Put down the person in your hand before you completely anger me." The veins on Yamamoto's forehead bulged as he shouted in a low voice, trying his best to conceal the flames in his heart that could burn the sky. Boom, boom, boom. The blazing flames roared, and the temperature of the entire 1st Division's quarters rose by several hundred times. However, they did not dare to approach Dustless, or rather, they did not dare to approach Minister Jiro. The flowing fire edge didn't differentiate between friend and foe. Yamamoto is already old. I'm afraid that when he suppressed me, he might not have been able to exert the full power of Ryujin Jaka. If it were me, with my attainments, I would definitely not be worse than him. Dustless's heart almost jumped out of his chest as he looked at Ryujin Jakuo with fiery eyes. He looked forward to seeing Ryujin Jakuo. With Ryujin Jakuo, his combat power would definitely increase exponentially. Apart from Spirit King, Yamamoto's Ryujin Jakuo was the only thing that could make Dustless interested. The Star Badge of Annihilation. It seems that only when the Death God uses Bankai can it be taken away. Head Captain Yamamoto will definitely not use Bankai so easily. The temperature of Zenka no Tachi will slowly evaporate the water in Soul Society until Soul Society collapses. Dustless frowned as he thought in his heart. That's right. A cunning glint flashed across Wu Chen's eyes. The masked Wu Chen sneered and said, "Immediately release Wu Chen, who was suppressed more than 10 years ago. Otherwise, I will kill Chief K. Jiro right now." This sentence made Minister Jiro's blood come back to life, and he hurriedly said to the head captain, "Head captain, you must not let that big devil go. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable. He alone can fight against the entire Death God." Except for Urahara Kisuk and everyone in Soul Society still thought that Dustless was still imprisoned in Avicii Hell. Impossible. Without even thinking about it, Head Captain Yamamoto directly rejected this absurd proposal. Soul Society spent a lot of effort to capture him. Don't even think about letting him go. Is that so? Hearing this, Dustless smiled indifferently. "I will only give you 30 seconds. If you don't let him go, the head of the vice captain of Sparrow will be removed." After that, Dustless indifferently raised his Zanpakuto and placed it on Minister Jiro's head. This old man will definitely not compromise, so he will only save Jiro at all costs. At such a short distance, I have to kill him in one blow. Otherwise, Jiro will be the one to die. This old man will most likely be forced to perform decapitation. Only in this way can he kill me with one blow. Dustless sneered in his heart, and slowly took out the star badge that belonged to Quincy. Once Head Captain Yamamoto dared to use Bankai, he will take the opportunity to seize Ryujin Jaka. Sparrow Tribe has followed me for thousands of years. I must not watch him fall indifferently. Head Captain Yamamoto was also struggling in his heart, and his hands holding his Zanpakuto were sweating. After a while, Dustless raised his Zanpakuto and pointed it at Minister Jiro's head, and said indifferently, 30 seconds is up. Since you don't agree, then he will die. The head captain suddenly said, "I agree to your conditions. I am willing to release Dustless." Hearing this, Dustless couldn't help but stagnate and said in a daze, "He actually agreed." Taking advantage of Dustless's sluggish state, a fiery red shadow instantly swept in front of him, and a blazing flame rushed towards him. This cunning old man. Seeing this, Dustless's pupils suddenly shrank, and immediately understood that this was old man Yamamoto's stalling tactic, waiting for him to reveal a flaw and choose to attack. Bankai, Remnant Flame Tachi. Chapter 1142. The affairs of the world were unpredictable. Wu Chen never expected that the head captain would play this kind of trick. His face changed greatly, and he hurriedly took out the star badge in his hand. However, the sharp edge of Zanka no Tachi mercilessly cut through Wu Chen's body. The star badge in his hand strangely fell to the ground after a fiery red halo. Zanka no Tachi, East, Rising Sun Blade. The wind of the burning sword cut through Dustless's body, and his whole body directly evaporated. The huge person disappeared into thin air. It was not that Dustless used some kind of ninjutsu to hide, but that the temperature of Zanka no Tachi was too hot. Clang! The white star badge fell to the ground, making a crisp sound. It was different from before, now it was dark red. What is that thing? Looking at the mysterious star badge, Yamamoto frowned and was surprised to find that the aura of the star badge was very similar to his Ryujin Jaka. Head Captain, it's my fault that I was caught by that guy. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in danger. Jiro's face was full of shame. He didn't dare to look at Yamamoto. Get up, Sparrow Tribe. Hearing this, Yamamoto helped him up and said, the guy with the mask is very strong and despicable. It's normal that you can't beat him. The vice captain of the Sparrow Tribe can't beat me. Do you think you can beat me? You are too ignorant and naive, Yamamoto. Dustless, who was killed, once again appeared out of thin air and looked at the red star badge on the ground. He quickly picked it up and was very excited. Is there something wrong with this guy's head? What's there to be happy about with a broken badge? Jiro muttered in confusion, thinking that Wu Chen had been beaten silly by Yamamoto. Humph, without the Sparrow Tribe, you can't threaten this old man. I will kill you again, Yamamoto said confidently. His tone was very calm. In front of his Zanka no Tachi, all the enemies were very fragile. No one could ignore the nightmare of Zanka no Tachi. Really? Dustless's face was full of ridicule. He immediately hooked his thumb at Yamamoto and said provocatively, if that's the case, then come over. If you can kill me, you can try. After saying that, Dustless raised his arms and stopped moving. You're courting death. Captain Yamamoto's sunken eyes suddenly bulged, and his murderous intent surged as he swung his Zanpakudo again. Zanka Tachi, East, Rising Sun Blade. Mobilizing all the Ryatsu in his body, Yamamoto swung his Zanpakudo. He thought that Dustless would be crushed on the spot, but Zanpakudo didn't react at all. How is this possible? Zanka no Tachi is useless? Looking at the Zanpakudo in his hand in disbelief, Yamamoto was dumbfounded for a while, his turbid pupils dilated several times, and his mind was in chaos. Could it be? His eyes narrowed as he stared at the strange star badge in Dustless's hand. Zanka no Tachi didn't listen to him, but the star badge in Dustless's hand was still shining. It was very similar to the aura of Zanka no Tachi, as if it was sealed in it. This was definitely not as simple as a coincidence. You killed me once just now, so I'll accept Zanka no Tachi as a gift. As for your lives, an old man who has lost his Bankai, I really can't bring myself to kill him. Hearing Wu Chen's words, Yamamoto and Jiro felt as if they had fallen into an ice cave, especially Yamamoto, who asked with a pale face, You took away my Bankai? You are the one who took it away? That's absolutely impossible. Really? It seems that you don't believe it. That's good, I also want to test the power of Zanka no Tachi. Hearing this, Dustless's face flashed a strange smile, and then under the surprised gaze of Yamamoto and Yamamoto, Ryatsu erupted from his body as hot as Yamamoto's. All things in the world turned to ashes. Ryujin Jaka. After the release of Zanpakudo, Dustless's body immediately erupted with a large number of flames, and the team behind him was suddenly burned to ashes. The terrifying high temperature turned everything into ashes, just like his liberation language. You bastard. Seeing this, Yamamoto's old face turned green, and suddenly a flash of light flashed in his mind. Remembering Dustless's strange behavior before, his face was pale as he said, You deliberately asked me to release Captain Dustless, who was imprisoned in the past. In fact, you want to force me to release Bankai. It seems that you are not confused, that is indeed the case. Under the mask, Wu Chen was immensely proud. Now that he had obtained Ryujin Jaka, his mood was unusually happy. It was rare for him to explain, "I know you won't choose to release the imprisoned captain, and I also know you won't give up on Minister Jiro, so you will only choose to attack me. All of this is actually within my expectations, but it's a pity that you think you have won. Ridiculous. I'm sorry to disturb you, head captain, goodbye." After saying that, Dustless disappeared from the first team's building. Listen to Yamamoto, no matter what, you must not let other captains know that the ability of Zanpakuto was taken away from me. Yamamoto warned cautiously. The biggest deterrent of a head captain is strength, or Zenka no Tachi. Without Zanpakuto, the consequences will be unimaginable, and Soul Society will inevitably fall into unprecedented turmoil. Chapter 1143. After leaving the First Division, Dustless went straight to the Fourth Division. He was running and flying all the way with a happy heart. After taking away Yamamoto's Ryujin Jaka, Dustless recalled the head captain's face that was as red as a pig's liver. That complacent old man always uses flowing fire edge to show off his muscles. Let's see what you can do in the future. Wu Chen gloated and said to himself with a smile in his eyes. Seeing the pain of losing Yamamoto's Zanpakuto, Dustless was very happy. An old man who has lived for thousands of years should have retired a long time ago. It's time for someone else to take over the position of head captain. Dustless's eyes glowed as he sped up. The Fourth Division's building was right in front of him. When he got close, he withdrew all his spiritual pressure. After all, he was still a prisoner of Soul Society. If he walked around openly, he would definitely attract endless trouble. It wasn't his first time coming to the Fourth Division. When Dustless was still the Fourth Division's vice-captain, he could see the entire Fourth Division with his eyes closed. In a few seconds, he arrived at Anohana's captain's office. TSK? So serious. Inside Anohana's captain's office, she was currently reading through many documents with a serene expression. Her expression was extremely serious and even meticulous. It was the complete opposite of her usual gentle self. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A shadow flashed through the air as Dustless entered through the window. While Unohana was still in a daze, he hugged her tightly from behind. "It's you?" Unohana turned her head in surprise as her eyes widened. Unohana grumbled, "You left for a few years without any news. I heard that you have a few lovers in the modern realm. They're living a carefree life." Hearing this, Dustless's expression turned awkward. Anohana's words made his stomach churn. He immediately promised, "Ray, my heart is comparable to the sun and the moon. My feelings for you will never change." Women were meant to be coaxed. Although this kind of promise was very common, its effect was astonishing. Even if they knew that it was a lie, they would still be in a good mood. Sweet talker. Unohua rolled her eyes and asked straightforwardly, "Coming to Soul Society for no reason? What kind of chore do you want me to do? Why would I give you such a hard job? I'm not a jinx." Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry, feeling deeply speechless, and then said bluntly, "Soul Society is about to face a great change, and the Soul Society that has been silent for thousands of years will be completely reshuffled." Unohana Retsu frowned and asked, "You're saying that Sosuke Aizen has already made his move? Speaking of which, Room 46 recently ordered Kimu Hakwiming to capture Rukia. I presume the mastermind behind the scenes is Aizen Sosuke. I was the one who instigated Sosuke Aizen to do this." Dustless admitted frankly, his tone free and easy. Unohua was stunned and asked in surprise, "Rukia is your subordinate, are you going to attack her?" "Of course not. When I was the captain of the 7th Division, Rukia was one of the only 3 members I had. She didn't have any direct conflict with me, so the reason I instigated Sosuke Aizen to capture her was to lure Shinozaki Ichigo to take the bait. Shinozaki Ichigo cares a lot about restraints, so once he hears that Rukia is about to be executed, he will definitely rush to Soul Society without stopping." Dustless quickly explained. This was a plan he had thought of many years ago. However, after Sosuke Aizen betrays Soul Society, there will be one person who will definitely die. Dustless spat out a bone-chilling breath. his eyes filled with killing intent. Definitely die? Hearing the thick killing intent in Dustless's words, Unohana Retsu's eyes flashed as she guessed. The person you're talking about, isn't it the head captain? You're smart, it's indeed him. Dustless's eyes burned with flames, not bothering to hide his growing ambition. That old man is too stubborn, so I can only take advantage of the chaos to kill him. But it's not my turn to do it, I'll just borrow a knife to kill him. Borrow a knife to kill him? Hearing this, Unohana Retsu thought of the head captain's strength and couldn't help but ask curiously, just whose knife? Soul Society doesn't have a direct confrontation with the head captain. Doesn't exist? That was in the past, but times have changed. That old man is already nearing the end of his days. Dustless chuckled in high spirits. Taking out the crimson flame star badge, the scorching temperature immediately attracted Unohana Retsu's attention. Could this be Ryujin Jaka? Swallowing her breath with difficulty, Unohana Retsu muttered in shock. After confirming it carefully, it can't be wrong, this is definitely Ryujin Jaka. How did it end up in your hands? Unohana Retsu's eyes locked onto Dustless as if she had seen a ghost, unable to shift her gaze away. Do you really want to know? Dustless looked at Unohana Retsu's face full of hope, as if she wanted to know, and said with an evil grin. If I remember correctly, Yong-in and the others have all gone for a routine checkup. Do you think we should take advantage of this rare opportunity to do something meaningful? Something meaningful? Unohana Retsu clearly did not understand what he meant. Her nose wrinkled, and just as she was about to ask, she saw the evil grin on Dustless's face and immediately understood what he meant. This is the captain's office. Unohana Retsu pouted unhappily, her face turning red. That's true, it is indeed a little inappropriate. How about I go to the bushes outside the window? There are fewer people there and the environment is more elegant. No one will disturb me, and the most important thing is the ventilation, Dustless said with an evil grin. Seeing this, Unohana Retsu gave up and could only whisper into Dustless's ear, "Hurry up, Yong-in and the others will be back in an hour." Dustless was overjoyed and pounced on Unohana Retsu, skillfully undressing her. What followed was a long and drawn-out hand-to-hand battle. Chapter 1144. On the bed, Unohana Lai was sweating profusely. Her eyes were blank and empty, as if her soul had been sucked away. Her limbs were weak, and it was difficult for her to even move. Her entire body was soft and sluggish. Turning her head with great difficulty, Unohana looked at Dustless, who was enjoying his tea on the sofa. She couldn't help but scold, "You said half an hour before. Now that you've messed around, you've increased the time by 5 to 6 times. Unohana Lai forced herself to stand up, but intense pain came from her lower body. She had no choice but to lie down again. Smelling the rotting smell in the air, she felt awkward and gloomy. Her face was so red that it was burning. I couldn't help it. You know how difficult it is for the beast in your heart to settle things. Dustless shrugged as if it had nothing to do with him. He then flattered, "If you want to blame someone, you can only blame yourself. How could you let go of such a great opportunity?" Earlier, Toru and Yong-in had come, but they were blocked by Dustless's enchantment. After shamelessly doing it for a few hours, Dustless finally stopped. Unohana Lai was also in this state. What do you plan to do after killing the captain? Team Zero will definitely appear again, and there will be a lot of trouble. Unohana Lai sighed heavily. Soul Society was plagued with disasters, but at the same time, she didn't doubt Dustless's idea. Why did Soul Society have to face so many disasters? To put it bluntly, it was because they didn't have enough strength. If they had Dustless's strength, they would be able to fight against all the Shinigami. Soul Society would naturally be peaceful if they didn't. Don't worry, I'm just borrowing someone else's knife to kill them. I'll use Sosuke Aizen to kill the captain, and in the end, they won't suspect me. When the time comes, I'll return to the abyss to show my loyalty. Dustless said mysteriously. Return to the abyss? After thinking for a while, Unohana Lai still could not understand Dustless's intentions, so she asked, "It's a good thing that you were able to come out. If you were to walk right into the trap again, it would take a lot more effort to get out. Don't worry, I'm just going to go through the motions to fool the others. When the time comes, someone will release me and elect me as the new captain. Dustless gave Unohana Retsu a smug look, and he closed his eyes in satisfaction. His leisurely appearance was filled with confidence, as if the future was in his hands. It was getting cold and late at night. When Soul Society was about to turn dark, Kuchiki Byakuya, who had left Soul Society for the modern world, finally returned. Other than him and Vice Captain Renji, there was also a haggard-looking girl, Kuchiki Rukia. Captain only crippled his death god power. His life is not in danger. Seeing Rukia's lifeless eyes, Renji Ase sighed with a complicated expression. That kid is just a mere human, you don't have to worry about him so much. Thank you, Renji. Rukia's tone was sincere as she thanked him from the bottom of her heart. He carefully observed Rukia's expression from the corner of his eyes. After hearing that Kuchiki Ichigo's life was not in danger, she became a lot more cheerful. Seeing this scene, Renji Ase was so angry that he stomped his feet. Those bastards in room 46 must be blind. Lucia, the Grim Reaper, is going to be sentenced to death. That Ichigo Shinozaki is not going to get involved. Are those nobles' brains damaged? Renji cursed in his heart. While he was cursing Central 46, he didn't forget to curse Ichigo Shinozaki. He was the one who started all of this, but the main culprit was still safe and sound. Looks like it's going to start soon. Suddenly, a bright light came from the alley 100 meters away. Dustless heard the conversation between Renji Ase, Byakuya, and Rukia clearly. Not killing Shinozaki Ichigo and only crippling his Shinigami's power was your captain's intention. It's an order from the Central Room 46. Kuchiki Byakuya? What a law-abiding captain. Sosuke Aizen used Kyoka Sujetsu to hypnotize Byakuya and gave Byakuya the order to cripple Kuchiki Ichigo's death god power. Dustless glanced at them deeply, then turned his head and disappeared into the night sky. In a few days, Urahara Kisuke will help Kuchiki Ichigo regain his power. Of course, his companions will also invade Soul Society. Everything is about to start. Sosuke Aizen will also officially betray Soul Society. Next is how to trick Sosuke Aizen to kill the head captain. Dustless's brain was spinning rapidly. Sosuke Aizen was not an idiot. He would not blindly challenge the head captain without absolute confidence. While Dustless was looking for a plan to kill the head captain, Kurosaki Ichigo and the others were also undergoing rigorous training. After Kurosaki Byakuya and the others left and returned to Soul Society, Urahara Kisuke immediately looked for Dream and promised to help Kurosaki Ichigo find the Shinigami's power. He thought that he would hesitate, but who knew that the anxious Kurosaki Ichigo would agree to help Urahara Kisuke without thinking. The death of his parents was a huge blow to Kuchiki Ichigo. He also realized how small he was. He could barely deal with a roadside Shinigami, but those captain-level Shinigami could easily kill him. If he was strong enough, Kuchiki Ichigo would not have been taken away by Byakuya. In the end, he was still too weak. All of this was the motivation for Kuchiki Ichigo to become stronger. Chapter 1145. In the blink of an eye, 1 month had passed. During this period, Dustless stayed in Soul Society, quietly waiting for the news of Kurosaki Ichigo and the others invading Soul Society. His strength had reached the peak of perfection. He hid in the 4th Division every day and lived a drunken life with Unohana Retsu. Although it was a little boring, Wuchen was also very comfortable with a beautiful woman accompanying him. In the 4th Division's building, Dustless leisurely crossed his legs, staring at the exquisite ceiling. Just now, Unohana Retsu was called for a captain's meeting. About half an hour ago, Hell Butterfly called Unohana Retsu away. It happened so suddenly that even Dustless didn't know what happened, but he was sure it wasn't something good. Because the captains of the various divisions were called to the 1st Division. At this moment, the atmosphere in the 1st Division was very solemn, and the captains were very cautious. Even Shunsui, who was usually carefree, had a serious expression. Captain Aizen is strong. How could he be killed for no reason? 40 minutes ago, the body of the 5th Division's captain, Sosuke Aizen, was found. His death was very tragic, and he was nailed to the wall of Soul Society. This is not normal. There is no large-scale Ryatsu fluctuation. It's impossible to kill a captain silently. Shunsui frowned and analyzed. Sosuke Aizen's strength was known to everyone after the battle with Dustless. He was one of the top existences in Soul Society. If we have to find someone who can kill Captain Aizen silently, I can't think of anyone other than that man. Seizen said, pointing the finger at Dustless. He's still locked in the abyss. How could he go out? How could old man Yamamoto not notice? Shunsui raised his doubts, his voice even heavier. If Dustless could sneak out without anyone noticing, and even had Captain Yamamoto didn't notice, it would be too terrifying. Even so, who else can do it besides him? The 2nd Division's captain, Soi Fan, looked at Yamamoto. Then let's go to the abyss to take a look. Head Captain Yamamoto's expression sank. He chose to be careful. There's no need for that, right? Unohualai's expression changed slightly, but in the next second, she covered it up perfectly. Unnecessary action? I don't think there's a need for a routine check. After all, that man was able to withstand the full force of Soul Society's siege by himself. It's normal for him to escape. Zuozhen, who didn't get along with Dustless, said. I agree. After all, Wuchen is not an ordinary person. Everyone knows about his combat strength. Furthermore, I can't think of anyone else who could kill a captain of Soul Society without anyone noticing. The silent Jushru Yukitake said. Unohua clenched her fists tightly. Dustless was still in her 4th Division. Clang! In the dark and deathly silent Avicii Hell, a series of rumbles suddenly rang out. Several figures were faintly discernible in the darkness. One could vaguely make out their pure white captain's feather weaves. There's no one here? Zuozhen was shocked. He used his Ryatsu to search for Dustless, but there was no one here. There was no Ryatsu at all. I say, you idiot dog, how did you become a captain? You can't even see a living person. I suggest you go home, wash up and sleep. In the deepest part of the dark space, a ripple appeared in the air. Then, a merciless mocking sound entered the ears of the captains. What did you say? Hearing Ji Hao's words, Zuozhen's hair stood straight up. His face blushed as he yelled, How dare you, a treacherous man! Enough, Captain Yamamoto. Head Captain Yamamoto waved his hand and walked close to Dustless. He circled around him and noticed that the seal on Dustless didn't loosen. Then he said, The seal is still there. Captain Aizen's death has nothing to do with him. I was wondering why you guys came to see me in groups. Looks like you guys are up to no good. Dustless sighed. Then he said with disdain, Sosuke Aizen is dead? God has finally opened his eyes. It's a pity that I didn't kill him last time. Now that I've caught the murderer, please thank him for me. Hearing this, all the captains frowned. Dustless was strong, and his mouth was vicious. How is this possible? He is clearly in my 4th Division. Her phoenix eyes quietly sized up Wuchen. Unohualai's mouth was wide open as she tried her best to hide her shock. When Dustless escaped from prison previously, he must have already destroyed all of the seals. Now, it actually became untouched again. How could she not be shocked? Looks like it has nothing to do with him. Zuozhen lowered his head in disappointment. You big black bear are really not a good thing. If I were the one who did it, you would have pulled out your blade and cut me down. You treacherous villain. Seizing the opportunity, Dustless bombarded him indiscriminately, mercilessly mocking Zuozhen. Because of the Eastern Deity Fortress, Zuozhen's relationship with Dustless was not harmonious. Moreover, because Dustless had killed Zuozhen in an instant a few years ago, he had lost all his face. The grudges between them were like water and fire. Dustless didn't let it go. Just as he was about to attack, a strange spiritual pressure that was as strong as a captain's descended on Soul Society. A captain's spiritual pressure? It's strange. It doesn't seem to belong to Soul Society. Jing Luchun said solemnly, Could it be that he killed Captain Aizen? Dustless's eyes flashed. He was familiar with the owner of this spiritual pressure. It was Shinozaki Ichigo. Chapter 1146. The Invasion of the Traveler's Calamity, and the Ryatsu of one of them was no weaker than a captain's Ryatsu. The entire Soul Society was on high alert, and all the captains returned to their respective divisions to fight the enemy. Unohana Retsu was no exception. Although the 4th Division wasn't a combat division, they still needed to prepare some medical equipment and medicine. As soon as the battle began, there would be an endless stream of injured people coming to the 4th Division. "Why are you back?" Just as she rushed into the captain's office, Unohana Retsu was stunned. Dustless was sitting with his legs crossed, looking so relaxed that he almost fell asleep. "Again? You're so boring. I've been in the 4th Division and haven't moved." Dustless raised his eyebrows and asked. "Of course, because the captain was with us, so I went." In just a few minutes, Unohana explained everything that had happened to everyone. "I see. Seems like you were all fooled by Aizen. How could he be killed? That kid is jumping around happily, and he's about to betray Soul Society." Dustless shook his head with a bitter smile. "The Shinigami were all fooled by Aizen. That should be Zanpakuto. You were all hypnotized by Kyoka Sujitsu, and your 5 senses were controlled by Sosuke Aizen. Naturally, you can't tell right from wrong." Squinting his eyes, Dustless lazily explained. "Aizen Sosuke was killed? That was impossible. There was no one in this world who could say that they could kill him. Aizen Sosuke was strong and cunning. His stats were perfect. If Dustless didn't know about Aizen Sosuke's past, he might have been fooled by him. It's okay. Don't worry. That kid's every move is within my plan. It won't be long before he takes advantage of this chaos to ambush the captain." Dustless's eyes flashed red as he said coldly, "Yamamoto's Genryusai Shigekuni is coming to an end. He already saw Aizen's Kyoka Sujitsu being at a disadvantage, and now I took away his Zanpakuto's ability. If I'm not wrong, the strongest Shinigami in a millennium is about to enter the end." Hearing this, Unohana's eyes clearly dimmed and became listless. "Lai, there's no need to feel sad. I was only able to lead the Grim Reaper forward after I became the head captain. He's already a few thousand years old, he's not suitable to be the head captain." Dustless patted Unohana's shoulder and comforted her. "His long-cherished wish is for Soul Society to be peaceful. Only under my leadership can Soul Society be truly peaceful." "That's true." After letting out a heavy sigh, Unohana Retsu could not deny that Dustless was stronger than head captain Yamamoto, so he was destined to be a greater threat. Boom boom boom. Powerful spiritual pressure spread out in all directions, and the surrounding buildings were all shattered. The shockwaves produced by the battle between the two figures turned the surrounding area into a large vacuum zone. What kind of monster is this guy? He's completely fine after being hit. Shinozaki Ichigo held his Zanpakuto with both hands as he looked at the man who was confronting him in horror. This man was close to 2 meters tall, and his body was covered in wounds, especially the crescent-shaped wound on his abdomen. An ordinary person would have died on the spot, but this man with a rough face was completely fine. Zaraki Kenpachi? This name appeared in his mind, and combined with the 11 written by Captain Hayori, Shinozaki Ichigo instantly remembered the captains that Urahara Kisuke mentioned before. A crazy laughter came out of Zaraki's mouth, and it made people's hair stand on end. He said with a hideous smile, "It seems that I came to the right place to fight with you. In Soul Society, there are 13 captains as strong as you." Shinozaki Ichigo's forehead was covered in cold sweat, and his heart was extremely heavy. "Strong? What nonsense are you talking about? I was killed by that man in an instant. Although there are 13 captains, they are not the strongest." Dustless's figure appeared in his mind, and Zaraki's murderous aura suddenly stagnated, and he became talkative. "But that guy was suppressed more than 10 years ago." You were killed by someone in an instant?" Shinozaki Ichigo's voice was trembling, and his pupils were enlarged several times. He suddenly felt a chill on his back. How strong is he to be able to kill a captain in an instant? After hearing that he was suppressed, he breathed a sigh of relief. In the central room 46, 3 figures gathered. They were Aizen Sosuke, Ikemaru Jin, and Higashi Senmei, who had already faded out of sight. His arms that were cut off by Dustless were also restored by Aizen Sosuke with the power of Hogyoku. Aizen-sama. Higashi Senmei was extremely grateful, and his voice was choked with emotion, and he almost knelt down and kowtowed. Aizen Sosuke just nodded, his heart was like ice, and he didn't even look at Higashi Senmei. If his 10 blades weren't destroyed by Dustless, Aizen would have killed him immediately. This is the last step of our plan, and we can leave Soul Society. Looking at the first division in the distance, Aizen Sosuke said expressionlessly. The last step? Higashi Senmei and Ikemaru Jin looked at each other, and then at Aizen Sosuke. Aizen glanced at the two and said coldly, "Kill Yamamoto." Chapter 1147. Hearing Sosuke Aizen's monologue, Ikemaru Jin and East Sanin Yoro felt like their brains weren't enough to process it. Their brain cells were instantly killed. Are you sure you want to do this? The head captain's combat power isn't something we can handle. East Sensei Yoru's face shrank. His reputation as the strongest Shinigami wasn't groundless. It was earned through countless battles. I deliberately attracted Ichigo Shinozaki to Soul Society to distract the Godai 13. We can take this opportunity to see how strong head captain Yamamoto really is. Aizen glanced at Higashian and said in a firm and fearless tone, "If we're afraid of Yamamoto, then there's no need to worry about Division 0, which is stronger than the Godai 13. East Sensei Yoru immediately shut up after hearing this. Even the head captain didn't dare to fight them. How could he wipe out Team 0? Everything was just empty talk. On the other side, the battle between Ichigo Shinozaki and Zaraki Kenpachi was also coming to an end. Both of them were covered in wounds. Boom boom boom. The white Ryatsu and the golden Ryatsu collided with each other, causing a huge explosion. Both of them stared at each other, preparing for the final blow. It was a carefree laugh. But combined with Zaraki's hideous face and his bleeding body, it gave people a sense of hysteria. Ever since I fought with that guy, I haven't felt so good like today. I want to thank you, Ichigo Shinozaki. Zaraki laughed wildly, his eyes were red, and his body was uncontrollably excited. The battle with Dustless was very frustrating. He used all his strength, but in the end, he couldn't touch Dustless. Even if he was right in front of him, he couldn't do anything. He couldn't hit Dustless. Instead of a battle, Zaraki felt like he was a clown performing alone. You can't stop me, you must save Rukia. Ichigo Shinozaki's eyes were shining brightly, and his tone was firm. This was a duel between two beasts. Roar roar roar. Zaraki Kenpachi and Kurosaki Ichigo tensed up. Perhaps it was due to their desire to win, Kurosaki Ichigo's Ryatsu suddenly changed, becoming violent and bloodthirsty. This unique spirit pressure swept across the sky and landed in every corner of Silent Soul Society. This seems to be the smell of void. In the dark space, a strange murmur sounded. Under the first team's quarters was the infernal hell. There was clearly a person tied to a specially made stone chair. This person was tightly bound by mysterious black bandages, unable to move. Only his mouth was exposed, and even his eyes were sealed. Although the person's appearance could not be seen clearly, it was not difficult to distinguish from the thin and small outline that this person was Dustless. Unlike Aizen's Kyoka Sujitsu, Dustless's Zanpakuto was being restrained. This is undoubtedly Kurosaki Ichigo's Ryatsu, but there is also the Void's Ryatsu. It seems that when I awakened the Shinigami's power, I also awakened the Void's power. Dustless muttered to himself. Even if he couldn't see, he was quite familiar with Kurosaki Ichigo's Ryatsu. The moment it was exposed, he could almost determine that it was Kurosaki Ichigo. Forget it, he's just a chess piece, no need to care. Feeling the level of Ryatsu, Dustless decisively ignored Kurosaki Ichigo's Ryatsu. This Ryatsu was comparable to the captain level, but compared to him or Aizen, it was not worth mentioning. I hope the Four Maple Court's Yoruchi will hurry up. I don't feel comfortable staying in this damn place for one more second. In the dark and cold space, the surroundings were dead silent, as if there was no one in hell, isolated from the world. Is it finally here? The show is about to start. The corner of Dustless's mouth curled up slightly. Suddenly he raised his head, and above him was the first team's quarters. Yamamoto, who was in the first team, looked at the distant sky and quietly observed the busy Shinigami. Almost all the Shinigami of each division were searching for the traces of the traveling calamities. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. In the spacious open-air conference room, 3 figures suddenly appeared. They were all wearing the captain's haori, and their faces were not friendly, especially the blood-stained Zanpakuto. Captain Ikamaru Jin. Captain Aizen, aren't you dead? East-sensei wants you? Bastard, weren't you locked up in the Avicii hell? Who the hell let you out? The captain, who regained his senses, was filled with murderous intent. Captain Aizen, you're asking so many questions at once at such an old age. Looking at Yamamoto, Aizen smiled and said, but I'm in a good mood today, and since I'm about to go to hell, I'll answer your questions one by one. A few decades ago, the Hogyoku that East-sensei took when he escaped from Soul Society was actually developed by me. Today, I'm also the one who let him out, and my death is also fake. Today, the traveling calamities invaded Soul Society, and the purpose is to distract the captains, and then I'll take the opportunity to kill you. So much nonsense to kill a person. Dustless, who was locked in hell, curled his lips. Through the consciousness hidden in the Hogyoku, Aizen and the captain's conversation was clear. He silently hoped that Aizen would quickly become the captain, and the future of Soul Society would be taken over by Dustless. Chapter 1148. Dustless heard Yamamoto's crisis clearly. Now that he was deprived of his Zanpakuto, and he had seen Aizen's Kyoka Suigetsu's Shirkai, he was doomed. Especially since it was a 3v1, Yamamoto's situation was critical, and Aizen's victory was in his favor. Old man, it's better that you die quickly. Save yourself the trouble of bossing people around every day. Let me take your place to protect the peace of Soul Society. With a frosty expression, Dustless sneered in his heart. After Yamamoto died, his position as the captain would be vacant, and Dustless would have the opportunity to take it. Boom boom boom. Even without the Zanpakuto, the strength of the head captain was still extraordinarily powerful. The aura all over his body burst out, and it was very shocking. Ikamaru Jin and East-sensei were sweating profusely. Only Aizen Sosuke felt better. Soul Society didn't do anything wrong to you. Why did you betray Soul Society? Betray Soul Society? Betray the entire Shinigami? Do you want to learn from Dustless? Sosuke Aizen. The captain's tone was 3 parts sadness and 7 parts hatred. Learn from him? How is that possible? My plan was born hundreds of years ago, and he wasn't even born at that time. Hearing this, Aizen said with disdain, and his eyes locked onto Yamamoto, I was the one who caused that group of captains to disappear 100 years ago. You, hearing this, Yamamoto's heart trembled, and he clenched his fists, and his spiritual pressure erupted even more fiercely. Hee. Seeing this, Ikamaru Jin grinned as he unsheathed his Zanpakuto and laughed, Kill him, Shinigami. Shoo shoo shoo. Almost in an instant, Jin's Zanpakuto extended hundreds of times and was about to pierce through Yamamoto's Genryusai Shigekuni. Clang clang clang. The sound of metal colliding was heard, and the Shinigami's Shinigami was pushed back by a powerful force, and the wall behind Yamamoto was penetrated. A cool breeze blew in, and the mysterious person's hair fluttered in the wind. Captain Kyoka and Captain Yukitake, your mission is to search for Yamamoto, and attacking without permission is a big problem. Jin's hand shook, and he took back his Shinigami. It was Kyoka Shunsui and Yukitake Jushur. Yosuke, is what you said just now true? Yukitake Jushuru's face was extremely pale. From the way he called him, Aizen and Yukitake Jushuru's relationship was very deep. As you can see, it is my wish to destroy Shinigami and establish a new order. Looking at Yukitake Jushuru's sad eyes, Aizen's heart was as calm as still water, without the slightest change's heart. Sosuke Aizen didn't have any feelings for this person, he even hated him. His naive thoughts were the opposite of Sosuke Aizen's beliefs. Silver, I'll leave Captain Jing Lu and Captain Floating Bamboo to the two of you. Just hold them back. As for the head captain, I'll take his life. Higashi-sensei and Jin looked at each other and pulled out their swords to attack. Boom boom boom. The swords danced and Ryatsu raged, and the team's house was instantly razed to the ground. The tyrannical Ryatsu was unstoppable, and everything it touched was turned into dust. Why don't you pull out your sword, head captain? Staring at the head captain, Aizen pointed out, are you deliberately holding back, or is your Zanpakuto ineffective now? Hearing this, the head captain's sunken eyes suddenly bulged out, and he stared at Aizen and guessed, are you the one who took away my Zanpakuto's ability? It seems like the Hogyoku's consciousness is right, this old guy's Bankai can't be used, and Ryujin Jaka that can destroy the world has become an ordinary Zanpakuto. Seeing this, Aizen's confidence skyrocketed, and he looked at the head captain with eyes full of fighting spirit. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. He pulled out Kyoka Suigetsu and raised his hand to attack. Do you think you can escape? Jin and Higashi-sensei wanted to chase Shunsui and Yukitake Jushiro, but Jin's face was full of ridicule. Is that so? You two may have forgotten that this is Soul Society. Floating in the air, Shunsui stabilized his body and said in a deep voice, there are many other captains in Soul Society, you should be the ones running, not us. Are you sure? Hearing this, Higashi-sensei's old-fashioned face showed a rare playful expression. Be careful, Yukitake, they must be plotting something. Since they dared to attack the old man, it means that they have a backup plan, and Aizen is the kind of man who can see 3 things ahead of him. Shunsui lowered his head and said solemnly, that's right. Yukitake Jushiro nodded, and looked around at the two, tense and alert. No matter what, let's tell the captains the news of these 3 defecting to Soul Society. Shunsui pondered, then he stretched out his hand, and countless deep black holes suddenly appeared in the void, and a dignified voice spread out. Bakudo 77, Heavenly Kong Luo. Everyone, there is an urgent matter that needs to be told. Shuinsue's voice rang in the ears of the captains and vice-captains of the Godii 13. Chapter 1149. The captains of Soul Society all heard Shuinsue's voice, and even the invading traveler Calamity received special treatment from Shunsui. Everyone, I'll keep it short. Shunsui calmed himself down and said, Aizen Yusuke and Ikamaru Jin have betrayed Soul Society. East Sensei was also released from infernal hell by them. Come and help us. With that, Shuinsue's clenched fists loosened, and the dark cracks in the black cavity used for communication were all closed. Phew, you can't escape this time. Shunsui breathed a sigh of relief, and his sad face regained some color. Is that so? Ikamaru Jin still maintained his sly smile. He was very cunning and despicable. His expression didn't change. He had already expected this. Jushiro Yukitake and Shunsui didn't say anything. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. After a few minutes of confrontation, there were several explosions in the sky, and then the captains of each division arrived. Seems like they're all here. Jin's narrowed eyes suddenly opened, and his gaze was like a viper's. You actually chose to die together. Your sincere feelings are really tearful. East Sinjin sneered before Jin could speak. How dare a mere traitor be so arrogant? The captains glared and released their spiritual pressure, and when they were about to suppress the two together, a violent explosion made their hearts tremble. Head Captain Sama. The old body was mercilessly blown away, smashing through several walls and leaving a long mark on the ground. He was covered in blood. Sosuke Aizen, who was holding his Zanpakuto, was unharmed. Head Captain Sama, why didn't you release your Zanpakuto? The captains were shocked and puzzled at the same time, and they were worried about the head captain. On the other hand, Aizen was relaxed, and they were confused. It's useless for the head captain to release his Zanpakuto. He saw Aizen Sama's Shirkai, and he's doomed to lose. East Sinjin said calmly, I'll go help the old man. Shunsui lowered the brim of his hat and said decisively, Help him? You'll die if you go. Jin smiled and said, "What's more, you don't have time to save others, you should worry about your own safety." Kakaka. Jin's words were like a prelude to destruction. Dozens of large crescent-shaped cracks appeared in the sky above Silent Soul Society. Is this a black voice? Bastard. As Shinigami, you actually colluded with the Great Void. The expressions of the captains changed, and they finally understood why Jin and East Senshi were so fearless. Kill all the death gods, don't let any of them go. Inside the Black Chamber, the excited shouts of the Great Void Realm experts could be heard. They flew out of the Black Chamber like flies, looking at the beautiful scenery below. The Soul Society seemed to have been injected with chicken blood as they all flew down like a swarm of bees. This is bad. Jingle Chunshue and the other death gods led the team leaders' expressions changed drastically. Most of these voids were trash, belonging to the lowest level of existence, but they had the advantage in numbers. The densely packed voids almost covered the sky above Soul Society. I'll go stop some voids. I'll leave this to you guys. Just as she was about to leave, a black flash of light descended from the sky. Pa, 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 pa. Boom, boom, boom. A giant flame mushroom cloud exploded in front of Soi Feng, blocking her path. Looking up, a group of great voids walked out of the Black Chamber. Each of them took off their masks, and the most eye-catching thing was that they had weapons similar to Zanpakuto. These guys are the protagonists. The captain's expressions were extremely ugly. The great voids before were just small fries. There are 3 Vasto Lord. The captains looked at each other, sweat dripping from their foreheads. Stark, Okuiora, and Hellable were clearly visible. In addition, there were also Jin and East Senshi. There were also a few Achuka's level Arankars. The scales of victory were obviously leaning towards Aizen Sosuke's side. Everyone, although it's a bit embarrassing, I still hope you can hold on for a while. At this moment, Jingle Chunshue suddenly said, turning his head to look at the captain who was temporarily suppressed by Aizen Sosuke. His hesitant eyes became more resolute. Aizen Sosuke's Kyoka Suigetsu was invincible. If he wanted to preserve Soul Society, he had to find another way. Using Shuinpa to the extreme, he disappeared in an instant. If this continues, Soul Society will definitely be annihilated in the end. The situation seems to be beyond imagination. In the deepest part of hell, Dustless whispered. At the same time, he understood Aizen Sosuke's intention. He wanted to use this opportunity to wipe out Shinigami in one fell swoop and completely wipe out Soul Society's Shinigami. Clang. In the dead space, there was a sudden roar of steel, and observation haki spread out. Are you finally coming to let me out? The 4 Maple Court's Yi Ichi finally came to fulfill the original cooperation treaty. Exhaling heavily, the figure was getting closer and closer. Carefully using observation haki to lock on the newcomer, his relaxed face suddenly solidified, and his mouth uncontrollably said, "Jingle Chunshue? It's you." Jingle Chunshue's body stiffened when he heard the words, looking at Dustless in surprise, and his heart was raging for a long time. This guy's whole body was bound, and his Ryatsu, including his eyes, was sealed. He didn't release his Ryatsu himself, but Dustless guessed his identity? It's as if he has other eyes. How did you find out? Forget it, these are superfluous. Thinking of the terrible situation of Soul Society today, Jingle Chunshue could only say the important things. Chapter 1150. Fiercely sucking in a mouthful of ice-cold air and calming his restless and burning heart, Shuinsue's thoughts became a lot clearer. He deeply looked at the man who was tied to the chair. Every time he met him, there would always be a different kind of miracle. Let's cut to the chase. I'm here to tell you that your enemy, Sosuke Aizen, has betrayed Soul Society and is now on the same path as you. After that, Shunsui stared at Dustless and added, he definitely won't let you go. So what? There are countless people who won't let me go. In the end, I'm the one who has the last laugh. Dustless's expression was ordinary, but he knew that Shunsui was implying something. You don't seem to understand what I mean. Seeing that Dustless didn't understand, Shunsui went straight to the point. Sosuke Aizen's purpose is the same as yours. Oh no, it's even more hateful than yours. He wants to kill all the Shinigami. Although you are now in prison, don't think that you can stay out of it. After all the Shinigami are finished, the next target will be you. Shuansui's tone was serious and threatening. What he meant was that everyone was now in the same boat. So that's how it is. You want to borrow my strength to deal with Sosuke Aizen? Dustless suddenly understood Shuansui's intention. After calculating the gains and losses, he suddenly felt that this plan was feasible. He could use this opportunity to clear his identity and wash away the previous stain. But even so, Dustless couldn't agree in a hurry. At least, he had to delay until the head captain died. And he had to give some benefits before he could compromise. If he agreed casually, it might arouse Shuansui's suspicion. Don't be fooled by his casual appearance, he was actually very meticulous. Any flaw would be caught by him. You want me to help you? Dream on. Dustless showed a sour face and directly refused. Silent Soul Society was already in a mess. Battles were going on everywhere. Even Shinozaki Ichigo was besieged by the Daimyo. Perhaps it was because of his charisma that Asanjing Rinji chose to fight together with him. He even released Rukia, who was imprisoned. At the same time, on the other side, Jin Ikimaru and East Sensei joined forces with the three Vasto Lord Great Emptiness, suppressing the captains to the point that they couldn't breathe. Pucci. The white sword pressure was unstoppable as it pressed down on Sosuke Aizen. Child's play. You're just Isoso without Ryujin Jaka. Sosuke Aizen's mouth curved into an elegant smile. Kyoka Suigetsu condensed a high density of Ryatsu and the tip of the blade. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. With a wave of his hand, the tip of his saber became glossy, and the two sword presences inevitably collided. Boom 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 boom. The intense sword pressures collided fiercely, and the aftermath spread out. No one was willing to give in, and they both wore down each other's strength. In the end, the two sword pressures canceled each other out, and no one hurt the other. Only the first team was flattened by the shockwave. Yamamoto was so angry that his bones trembled, but he could only endure it. Whoosh! A violent hurricane came head-on, and the momentum was sharp, obviously with a cold light. Looking closely, it turned out to be a Zanpakuto that was coming head-on. Yamamoto's movements were even more strange. Even if he realized the danger, he pretended not to know. Pucci! The Zanpakuto penetrated Yamamoto's body, leaving a bright red mark. One-hit kill. No matter how good you are, this is the end. Sosuke Aizen chuckled. The nail buried in his body was removed, and he was in a good mood. Yamamoto's heart was crushed by him. Even if this old man dies, I will drag you down with me. Yamamoto used the last of his strength to grab Aizen's arm. His Ryatsu erupted like magma. Die together? Don't joke around. What you're holding now is just an illusion created by Kyoka Suigetsu. It's not the real me. Sosuke Aizen replied calmly, his expression unchanged. Don't try to fool this old man. Your ability is indeed terrifying. After fighting for so long, this old man couldn't even touch your clothes. Yamamoto's body was full of holes, and Sosuke Aizen's clothes were clean. Kyoka Suigetsu's ability was terrifying, and Aizen couldn't even catch his real body. However, your Ryatsu won't lie. This old man is sure that this is your real body. Hearing this, Sosuke Aizen's pupils shrank, and his face turned green. He said with a hoarse voice, "So, you deliberately exposed a flaw to lure me? You're gambling with your life." Yamamoto smiled and looked at him with disdain. This is why you're not as good as Captain Dustless. You only know how to use despicable abilities. This old man fought him head-on. Aizen was like a stone, and he didn't have the slightest emotion. The winner was king, and there was no such thing as being honorable or despicable. History was written by the victors. Die with this old man, Hado's 96, one-sword cremation. Yamamoto's entire body emitted a boiling Ryatsu that was close to materialization. Yamamoto used his final technique, and a blade-shaped flame engulfed him and Aizen. Boom boom boom. An earth-shattering explosion spread, and it spread to every corner of Soul Society. The power was enough to flatten half of Soul Society. Yamamoto's Ryatsu completely disappeared, and the ruthless flames evaporated him. The strongest Shinigami of this generation had fallen. Chapter 1151. Somehow, Shunsui also seemed to feel the death of the head captain. His heart suddenly trembled, the corner of his eyes twitched slightly, and he remained silent. He needed time to stabilize his sadness. You don't have a choice now. With a cold look, Shunsui decisively chose to shut up. It was a waste of time to talk nonsense with people like Dustless. His thick hairy arms grabbed the stone chair he was sitting on, his zanpakuto was unsheathed, and he looked at Dustless indifferently. What do you want to do? Seeing this, Dustless's face changed slightly, instinctively realizing that something bad was going to happen. Shuansui's eyes were dead, without any extra emotion, as cold as a machine. Dustless keenly smelled other intentions, staring at Shuansui's face. He suddenly felt that this guy was going to cut off all means of retreat. Shunsui didn't speak, his eyes narrowed as he looked at the chain connected to the stone chair, and his zanpakuto slashed straight. Clang, clang, clang. Sparks flew everywhere. The chain couldn't withstand the force and suddenly broke. Shuansui's zanpakuto cut off the thick chain, and the bound stone chair suddenly loosened. According to the current situation, borrowing your power is necessary, otherwise Soul Society's end will be miserable. Don't think you can stay out of this matter. After saying that, Shunsui directly carried the huge stone chair out of Avicii Hell. This bastard wants to use me as a tool? Suddenly understanding Shuansui's intention, Dustless's eyes twitched, thinking of a countermeasure. In the outside world, everyone stared blankly at the scorched earth of quiet Soul Society. The massive attack caused the entire sky to tremble. Even the Jillian Knights, who had been slaughtering without any sense of reason, stopped their earth-shattering attacks. It was self-evident what the disappearance of the head captain's spiritual pressure meant. If a person's heart was still beating, spiritual pressure would continue to overflow, and when it completely disappeared, it also meant that the heart stopped beating. The strongest Shinigami in 1,000 years had become history, disappearing in the long river of time. This old man is really crazy. I was almost killed by him. In the sad atmosphere, there was an untimely sound of rejoicing. Aizen Sosuke appeared in front of everyone. If he wasn't prepared in advance, he might have been killed. Sosuke Aizen's appearance immediately attracted the hatred of the Shinigami, especially Sajin, who glared at him with bloodshot eyes. He shouted at the top of his lungs. Bankai, Kalasutra King of Heaven's punishment. The earth suddenly trembled, and then a huge shadow appeared in the sky. Soul Society became dim, and a giant zanpakuto that could cut the sky fell from the sky. Aizen Sosuke turned his head and glanced at the left side of the village, then he looked away and simply ignored it. At the same time, a sharp black blade fell from the sky. Tao Breaker 90, Black Coffin. The left side of Kamimura was like the gravity of the earth, attracting all the sharp edges of the black light. His broad body was the best target. Puchi, Puchi, Puchi. The powerful light ruthlessly crushed the left side of Kamimura, and his body was bleeding like a funnel. Although I only used 1/3 of the power, it's enough to deal with you. Aizen glanced at the left side of Kamimura and muttered to himself. Boom! Kamimura, who was heavily injured, finally couldn't break the Bankai. After breaking the Bankai, he fell to the ground powerlessly. His breath was weak, and he was only one step away from death. Aizen-sama. Seeing Aizen Sosuke appear, Arankar, who was fighting with the Shinigami, immediately knelt on one knee to show his loyalty. I thought I would need to go to Hueco Mundo to fight against the Shinigami, but it seems that was unnecessary. Looking around at the smoke-filled Soul Society, Aizen Sosuke's majestic voice thundered across the world. Destroy all the Shinigami now. Although I don't know what's going on, the bastard who ordered the capture of Rukio was you, right? A ray of light came from behind, and Aizen Sosuke turned his head, revealing half of his face. His eyes flashed with a strange light, but he quickly calmed down. So it's you, Kurosaki Ichigo, you're a good pawn. Hearing this, Kurosaki Ichigo was furious. He had just learned Bankai, and his Zanpakuto was about to cut off Aizen Sosuke's head. Aizen Sosuke shook his head contemptuously and stretched out his arm. Clang! His 5 fingers easily grabbed the Zanpakuto's body, and Kurosaki Ichigo couldn't move. You caught my Zanpakuto with your bare hands? Kurosaki Ichigo's eyes widened, and he looked at Aizen with a stunned expression. Aizen's eyes made his soul tremble. Aizen's expression was cold, and he used Kyoka Sujetsu, and a cold ripple splashed in the air. Pucci! Kurosaki Ichigo felt a sharp pain in his chest as a ghastly wound suddenly appeared on his chest. He had instantly killed a Shinigami that was comparable to a captain. His casual attitude reminded everyone of Dustless in the past. He also killed a captain-level Shinigami in one hit, and the so-called captain-level Shinigami was as fragile as a chicken in front of them. Boom boom boom. A thick pillar of energy exploded, and a violent hurricane swept across Soul Society. The ground beneath the ground burst open, and a figure rushed out from it. Boom! Shunsui, who was carrying a stone chair, landed safely and put the sealed Dustless on the ground. You're out. Feeling that his body suddenly became a lot warmer, Dustless couldn't help but look up, and his sealed eyes vaguely saw the sun. Chapter 1152. The appearance of Wu Chen and Jingle Chunshui immediately pushed the atmosphere of the scene to another climax. They all looked at the two people unexpectedly. You should have died a few years ago, right? Why are you still alive? Aizen, who was the first to recover, was shocked. He forced himself to suppress the horror in his heart. He saw Jin kill Dustless with his own eyes, and now he suddenly came back from the dead. How could he not be shocked? Sosuke Aizen wasn't the only one who was shocked. The other captains were the same. They were very familiar with this face that they wanted to forget but could never forget. It was almost imprinted in their hearts. So. The captains who were fighting against the great Void Masters all landed beside Shunshui and said with an unfriendly expression, Captain Shunshui, why did you release this evil man? Do you think that Soul Society is not chaotic enough and want to speed up its destruction? Hearing this, without waiting for Shunsui to answer, Dustless turned his head and said, even if he couldn't see, he knew that this person was Soi Fon through his observation haki. Makes sense. Kuchiki Byakuya nodded. Captain. Rukia, Hinamori, and Matsumoto all had complicated expressions. If it wasn't for Dustless, they might still be wandering in the Shinkai Academy and be regarded as their teacher. Sensing the high Ryatsu level of the three, Dustless smiled and said softly, so it's you three. Long time no see, it seems that you have improved a lot. Everyone, I can understand your dissatisfaction and resentment, and I will naturally be willing to be punished in the future. However, Soul Society is now in an unprecedented crisis, and I will naturally be punished if I can survive this, but, speaking up to here, Shunsui looked at the great void in the sky and felt extremely melancholy. Jillian, who was still walking out of the black cavity, felt his heart fall to the bottom. Shunsui looked at Dustless and said, using evil to fight evil, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But you are really cunning. You want to use me as a tool to deal with Aizen? At the very least, you have to remove the seal on my body. Otherwise, I can only passively take a beating, and all of you death gods might be annihilated. His words were full of threats, implying that he would not work until the seal was broken. No, I'm firmly against it. If the seal was broken, who would be able to control him? Don't forget the dangers of the past. The captain of the 10th Division, Toshiro Hifani, said in a mature tone, not like a child at all. You're right. Hearing this, Jingle Chunshui nodded. This worry was not unreasonable. It was hard to tell what a person was thinking. If Dustless took the opportunity to betray them, Soul Society, which was gradually losing, would not be able to contemplate the consequences. Then release the seal on his eyes. Xuansui's eyes shone brightly as he said resolutely, "Even if we die, we have no choice. It's best to use his power to fight Sosuke Aizen." All the captains were silent. Although they felt very uncomfortable in their hearts, they knew that this was an undeniable fact. They could only walk this path to the end. Even if they knew that hell was ahead, they could only press forward. "It's good that you can understand." Xuansui's dry mouth revealed a faint smile. Silence meant agreement. Immediately, he reached out and grabbed the black bandage next to Dustless's eyes. "Humph. Don't even think about letting him go. Do you think we don't exist?" The demonic voice fell. Dongseng Yu's Zanpakuto swept towards them, temporarily forcing the captains to retreat. Only Dustless was left alone and bound in place. A chilling laughter came out from Dustless's throat. Looking closely, the black bandage that sealed his left eye had been torn off by Shunsui. The purple eye was exposed to the air. "Bastard!" Dongseng Yu was furious. His Zanpakuto was surrounded by cold, murderous intent. He raised his Zanpakuto and slashed towards Dustless's head. Naive. The Ryatsu and chakra in Wu Chen's body were released. Even if his 4 limbs were still sealed, a mere East Sage would not be able to hurt him. Heido 96. The silent Ryatsu went berserk and the fermented ground turned red. It was very hot. A huge flame in the shape of a sword was printed on the scorched ground. "This is..." Dongseng Yu's Zanpakuto suddenly stopped. He looked at the ground under his feet in horror. He remembered that the captain almost killed Aizen Sosuke with the forbidden Heido. He quickly retreated. "Everyone leave quickly. This is cremation with sword." Xuansui's pupils shrank as he quickly shouted. At the same time, he also quickly retreated. He looked at Dustless with his eyes wide open and called him a madman. In order to break the seal, he chose to use Heido 96 to attack him. Cremation with sword. The blue sky turned dark red again, and the ravaged Quiet Soul courtyard cracked open again. The power of this move was beyond imagination. The moment the fire broke through the ground, all life, no matter if it was a Shinigami or a Daimoku, were forced to retreat by the destructive temperature, including Aizen Sosuke. Boom boom boom. The dark red magma sword exploded, and the aftermath shattered the Daimoku who did not have time to escape, including the black space that connected Soul Society and Hueco Mundo. In front of cremation with sword, nothing was worth mentioning. It was as fragile as paper. In the distance, Aizen Sosuke's face turned black as he clenched his fists. He felt an unprecedented humiliation. Just now, he actually ran away. His old face turned red, and his body stopped responding in the blink of an eye. What the hell is this thing made of? It's so hard. It was hit by cremation with sword, but it was not damaged at all. Dustless's whisper came from the fire pillar that connected heaven and earth. Chapter 1153. Whether it was the Great Void or the Shinigami, they were all stunned. The flames from the fire pillar almost made them collapse. They felt like they were walking in magma hundreds of meters away. And Dustless, who was in the center zone, actually did not even have the slightest reaction. His entire person was calm and collected, without the slightest injury. The desolate tone just now was clearly complaining that the power of cremation was too weak and that it couldn't destroy the various sealing items that bound him. "You bastard!" Tozai Isami's murderous intent locked onto Dustless, who was bathing in the fire pillar. He felt like his heart was being cut into pieces. "Don't worry about these Shinigami. Attack that sealed man with all your strength." Looking around at the Great Void, Aizen ordered coldly. He pointed his spear at Dustless. Most of the captains had seen his Kyoka Suigetsu, so it was easy to deal with him. Only this monster was the most difficult to deal with. He had seen the release of Kyoka Suigetsu, but he wasn't affected at all. "Ah?" The Great Void Realm experts nodded one after another. They all used their strongest moves to attack Wu Chen. He sat on a special stone chair and was sealed to the point that he couldn't move. He was a natural living target. So. All kinds of void flashes filled the sky. The sky above Soul Society was dyed in different colors. All kinds of void flashes bombarded Dustless. Rukia, do we need to help him? Looking at the sealed Dustless, Kurosaki Ichigo's heart was bursting. He ignored the wound on his chest and said seriously, that guy called Aizen is very strong. He killed me with one strike. Shimu Rukia glanced at Shinozaki Ichigo and said, is that so? However, Captain Wuchen once killed Aizen Sosuke in one hit. Kurosaki Ichigo's mouth opened so wide that it could fit a fist. His head instantly exploded. If he could be killed by void flashes, Soul Society wouldn't have to spend so much effort to catch him. His combat power is higher than the entire Godei 13. Shunsui lowered his hat and said seriously. The captains lowered their heads and pondered. Although they were quite unhappy with Shuinsue's words, they couldn't deny that it was true. What's this illuminating light? Dustless curled his lips in disdain. His left eye suddenly widened, and an overbearing aura rose into the sky. Golden ripples visible to the naked eye spread like waves. Haushikuhaki swept across the entire sky above Soul Society. The incoming void flashes didn't touch Dustless and exploded in the air. Boom boom boom. A series of explosions were incessant, and all kinds of void flashes exploded one after another. In just a minute, the sky above Soul Society was filled with the aftermath of all kinds of void flashes and explosions, turning into a forbidden area. Only Dustless seemed to be unaffected, and the others all retreated. The group of Grim Reapers looked at Dustless, who was standing peacefully with a complicated expression. They felt very upset. The death of the head captain was as if the backbone of Soul Society was broken. All the captains had lost their faith and were at a loss. Looking at Dustless, they secretly sighed. The dignity of Soul Society needs a prisoner to defend it. It's ridiculous. Whoosh! Amidst the black smoke, an ear-piercing howl was heard. Looking up, a great void was dashing over at the speed of light. There was a shiny long gun in his hand. Ulquiorra? Only half of his eye was exposed, which was the reincarnation Sharingan. Dustless joked, worthy of being Aizen Sosuke's #1 loyal dog. Oh no, the #1 loyal fan. Void's detection nerves and hearing were second to none. Dustless's words were clearly heard by Ulquiorra. His Ryatsu suddenly increased, and the Ryatsu in his hand shined brighter. Whoosh! His diving body suddenly stopped, and the long gun in his hand was thrown out forcefully. Thunder Spear! The tip of the spear flashed with lightning, and the sharp crackling sound was even more chilling. With Ulquiorra's anger, it smashed toward Dustless. Whether it was the #1 dog or the #1 fan, it deeply hurt Ulquiorra's self-esteem. Dustless's eyes were fixed on the falling spear, and an irregular black flame flashed in his eyes. Amaterasu! A black flame burned on the body of the Thunder Spear. In the blink of an eye, it swallowed the entire spear. When it was about to hit Dustless, it was swallowed up by Amaterasu. Ulquiorra opened his mouth, but he didn't say anything. I'll just defeat you all in one fell swoop. Dustless muttered to himself. His tone was as plain as eating and drinking. With your current state? Aizen raised his voice and mocked. Do you know how many Voiders are in Soul Society now? I can tell you clearly that this number is impossible to estimate. If I have to find an adjective, it would be thousands of Voiders. You can't do it, but it doesn't mean that others can't. Dustless glanced at them and whispered, Kaibao of the King. The void behind Dustless splashed thousands of ripples, and then countless divine weapons came out from it. The sky behind Dustless was dyed golden by the massive number of weapons. 1,000, 10,000, tens of thousands. It was like a bottomless pit, and the number of weapons kept increasing. No one knew the exact number, but above the great Voiders of Soul Society, there were hundreds of divine weapons floating above their heads. How many abilities does this guy have? Aizen was stunned, and his eyes were burning with jealousy. He looked at Dustless with jealousy. This guy seemed to be omnipotent, and there was no ability that he didn't know. Chapter 1154. All kinds of divine artifacts were scattered all over the sky of Soul Society. The sky was crushed and there was almost no end to it. From afar, it looked like a large dark cloud. Bastard! Seeing this, Aizen Sok's hair dripped with sweat, and he finally lost his arrogant appearance. His eyes stared fixedly at Dustless, and he felt an unprecedented sense of defeat. This damned guy was sealed, and just one eye was enough to make him powerless. Die all of you. A lazy voice fell, and the fate of countless greater voids was instantly decided. All kinds of divine weapons hovering in the void fell to the ground. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. Awo! In half an hour, the sound of bodies being crushed and hysterical screams became the main theme of Soul Society, sweeping through the entire Soul Society. That horrifying howl almost caused their minds to collapse. How is this possible? What kind of ability does this guy have? Looking at the army of Hueco Mundo being crushed in an instant, the captains were shocked speechless, and their hearts almost jumped out of their chests. Dustless alone crushed Hueco Mundo. What kind of strength was this? It was a question whether the captain could do it. After all, he was old, and compared to the young and strong Dustless, he was much weaker. Moreover, the thing that was most impossible to overlook was that at this moment, Dustless was still sealed on the stone chair, and the strength he revealed now was far from his prime. This bastard! Aizen Sok's expression became uglier and uglier, and he held a blue pearl in his hand, the Hogyoku. The Hogyoku was forcibly taken away, but not only did his strength not weaken, he became stronger. Aizen Sok gritted his teeth so hard that they were about to break, and dense lines of blood appeared on his face. Ever since he met Dustless, his life of bad luck had begun. Now, the strength he obtained after hundreds of years of hard work was less than the tip of the iceberg. How could he accept this? He's too dangerous. We should seal his eyes as well. Sajin said, looking at the expressionless Dustless. He always felt that this guy was omnipotent, whether it was Genjutsu, Taijutsu, Kendo, Kido, or Bakudo. Dustless's absolute strength made them feel ashamed. You're right. We shouldn't have unsealed his eyes. I'm sure that he can defeat these invading greater voids without using his limbs or eyes. That Vasto Lord called Ulquiorra is a good example. This time, Shunsui agreed with Sajin. He thought it was no big deal to reveal one eye, but now it seems he was too naive. The Ryatsu in his body surged. Aizen's eyes focused on Dustless and his thumb pointed to the sky. Boom boom boom. It has to be said that Aizen's Ryatsu was incredibly powerful. Ajuchas, who was close to him, was forced to kneel on one knee. Even Stark and Ulquiorra's faces changed. Just by using spiritual pressure, they couldn't resist. The so-called Vasto Lord was like a baby in swaddling clothes in front of Sok Aizen, not worth mentioning. It's faintly. Sok Aizen began to chant, and every time he said a word, the sky would turn dark. This is a good opportunity. Staring at the fragments behind Ulquiorra and Stark, this distance was just enough for him to use that technique. Dustless's purple eyes widened and he shouted, "Heavenly Hand Power!" Together with the sealed special stone chair, it appeared behind Ulquiorra and Stark in a strange manner in an instant. Aizen-sama is powerful. He can suppress us with spiritual pressure alone. Ulquiorra's respectful eyes were full of admiration and fanaticism, and even stupidly loyal. In his eyes, Sosuke Aizen was already a god. Yes, Aizen-sama is the guiding light sent by God to guide Hueco Mundo. The Minos voids who suffered from Hogyoku Arcana were grateful to Aizen's change of heart. Then I'm sorry, your god is about to fall. Hearing this, the Minos voids turned around and stared blankly at Dustless floating in the void. They all felt that their worldview had collapsed, and their IQ was not enough. This guy was clearly sealed, and he was even dragging a huge stone chair. However, he moved without making a sound. It was as if he was teleporting through space, appearing and disappearing like a ghost. This was simply blatant cheating. Dustless glanced at Sok Aizen and whispered, "Hado 90, Black Coffin." Space and time distorted, revealing the cold and dark depths of the universe. Black demonic light drilled out and almost instantly sealed Sok Aizen. Poochie, Poochie, Puchi. The sharp shadowless blade pierced through Aizen Sosuke's body, and even his bones were broken, making a crackling sound. Soak Aizen's body instantly hurt, and just like Dustless said, his body began to fall slowly, and he instantly lost the ability to fight. Aizen-sama. Soak Aizen's Arcana lackeys cried out and rushed towards Dustless with bloodshot eyes. These idiots have all been brainwashed. The so-called Vasto Lord's brain isn't that bright either. The group of Minos Voids who rushed towards Dustless, including Soak Aizen's confidant Ulquiorra, all pulled out their swords and coldly waved them at Dustless. This is a good opportunity, take this opportunity to capture them all. Seeing this, Shunsui Jingle hurriedly gave out orders, which was completely different from his usual sloppy self. Chapter 1155. Everyone knew the saying, "Take advantage of your weakness." Shunsui Kiraku, who was as cunning as an old fox, seized this rare opportunity to attack Sosuke Aizen. A bunch of idiots! Dustless roared as he saw the group of Minos Grande charging at him. Boundless repulsive force spread out in all directions. Super Shinra Tensei. The destructive impact landed, and all life forms within a few kilometers received a fatal blow. The powerful Minos Grande were directly crushed into powder, and their ashes were scattered across the entire Soul Society. So strong, he is indeed the most abnormal. Shinozaki Ichigo said enviously with a rare hint of respect in his tone. Shinozaki Ichigo's gaze shifted to Sosuke Aizen, who was instantly killed. Shinozaki Ichigo's heart was filled with respect. At first, he thought that Rukio was just making things up, but now it seemed that it was true. Sosuke Aizen could instantly kill him, but Dustless could instantly kill him. Killing a captain-level Shinigami with a snap of his fingers, such strength was beyond Shinozaki Ichigo's understanding. If this kid knew that I was the one who killed his parents, I wonder if he would still be like this. Dustless muttered to himself as he looked at Shinozaki Ichigo from the corner of his eyes. Black Void Flash. The black afterglow from hell came from the front. The giant beam was extremely powerful, and the captains and Minos Grande who were in the way sensed the power of the flash and avoided it. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The black light passed through many figures, and after a long journey, it finally locked onto Dustless. Just in time. Seeing this, Dustless's eyes flashed. Not only did he not resist, but he also used his willpower to control his body and collided with the black light head-on. Boom boom boom. The power of the black light hit Dustless, and the power was enough to instantly kill a captain. The surrounding space was distorted, but the special stone chair floating in the air and Dustless were not hurt at all. What the hell is this thing made of? It's so sturdy. Dustless lowered his head and looked at the black bandages all over his body. He was rather surprised. Leaving aside the fact that it was completely fine after being directly hit by one-strike cremation, now that it was hit by Black Void Flash, which was even more powerful than Wang Su's flash, it was still as good as new. It was not hard to tell how extraordinary the material used to construct this item was. Forget it, I'll let Team Zero's Sayaso Tongsen and Shidoro Senju undo it for me. Head Captain Yamamoto died in battle, and it won't be long before they arrive at Soul Society. Dustless muttered to himself as he looked up at the sky. Your enemy is in front of you, not in the sky. It was Stark, the first of the 10 blades, who was pointing a gun at him. You want to challenge me? Come, don't hold back. Blast with all your might. It's best if you can destroy this damned thing used to seal me. Dustless puffed out his chest and motioned for Stark to aim. Stark's mouth twitched, and he pulled the trigger without hesitation. Bang bang bang. A large number of void flashes blasted towards Dustless. Just like before, he floated in the sky motionlessly, looking forward to the incoming void flashes. Boom boom boom. Another series of explosions sounded. Dustless, who endured all the power of void flashes, was still unharmed. The black bandages on the surface of his skin were the best defensive armor. It could withstand any kind of attack. That's it for today. Our goal has been achieved. Retreat back to Hueco Mundo immediately. Stark was ready to use all his strength to teach Dustless a lesson, but Aizen Sosuke suddenly gave the order to retreat. The group of Minos Voids could only watch the Broken Soul Society leave. Aizen Sosuke himself was extremely miserable. He felt pressure when he walked, and he needed both Higashi-sensei and Ikamaru-jin to support him. He was also out of breath. Dustless also landed on the ground. He raised his head to observe the Minos Voids who were gradually escaping into the darkness. He was indifferent. Are you kidding me? Are we just going to watch them leave when Soul Society is destroyed like this? Seeing all the captains stop, the young Nissan Toshiro was unwilling to give up. I can understand your feelings, but we were almost wiped out when Soul Society had the advantage. If they chase us to Hueco Mundo, I'm afraid Aizen Sosuke won't need to do it himself. The waves of Minos Voids are enough to destroy us. Shunsuke sighed. He was also unwilling to give up. It doesn't matter if you chase them or not. Captain Shunsuke, please fulfill the agreement we made in Avicii Hell. After ensuring the safety of Soul Society, remove the seal on my body. Shunsuke's lazy words made all the captains look at him in disbelief. They didn't expect him to have such an agreement with Dustless. No, this guy is too dangerous. Sakura Seizen's eyes glowed with determination. He stood up and objected. Everyone, at this time, two figures descended from the sky. The captains of Godai 13 drew their swords again. It was Forfing Dojo's Yiichi and Urahara Kasuke. Captain Urahara and Forfing Dojo's captains were framed. Don't worry about your Zanpakuto. Seeing this scene, Shunsuke quickly explained. Aizen personally admitted that he framed Urahara Kasuke and the captains 110 years ago. The two of you really know how to choose the right time. Wu-Chun turned his face away and said coldly. According to the secret agreement between Dustless and Urahara Kasuke, the seal on his body should have been removed a long time ago. Who would have thought that he would delay until now? It was obviously intentional. Despicable, I was unknowingly tricked by him. I'm afraid Urahara Kasuke already guessed that Soul Society would be destroyed, so he deliberately delayed my release and pushed me and Soul Society into the same boat. Dustless rolled his eyes and understood Urahara Kasuke's intention. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.